Namaskar. Good afternoon. I am Professor Ramesh Chandra God. I'm Professor and Head of Kalanidhi Division in Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. Currently, as an additional charge, I am also holding the responsibility of the Director National School of Drama. I extend a very hearty welcome to all our panelists in this international symposium on Terracotta temple artwork of Undivided Bengal. This basically symposium is based on the research project undertaken by my colleague Dr. Shilpi Roy, and the basic objective for this particular project is also related to a certain collection we have in our Kalanidhi Cultural Archive. You will know Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts is a premier art and culture research institute which was set up in 1987, and Kalanidhi division of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts is responsible for preservation, cataloging, dissemination of all kind of cultural heritage resources. So in this regard, we have a print library, Kalanidhi Reference Library, we have Kalanidhi Cultural Archive, we have a slide unit which contains a lot of visuals. We also have a very good repository, very large repository of Indian manuscripts, ancient manuscripts of more than 300,000, microfilmed and digitized from all over India, from almost 52 manuscript libraries. So Kalanidhi Cultural Archive, which is a repository of more than 45 personal collections of eminent scholars, photographers, art historian, art collectors, people from literary works, from music, and basic objective of Kalanidhi Cultural Archive is to promote or disseminate information on various cultural artifacts, collections like Anand Gomaraswamy. We have Samomitra collection, we have photographs of Raja Deen Dayal. So Kalanidhi Cultural Archive is very rich collection, and based on one of this collection on Terracotta temples, this project has been initiated by Dr. Shilpi Roy with the help of Indian Council for Historical Research, ICHR. So let me just thanks ICHR official for giving us this project and initiating this research work at IGNCA. Today's program, which will be for 2 days, 2 hours, it's an online program. Today from 3 to 5 and tomorrow also from 3 to 5. And we have invited eminent scholars in the field. Our member secretary, Dr. Joshi, Sachidanand Joshi ji, he's having some other commitments, so he will not be able to join us. So let me take this opportunity to extend a very hearty welcome to all our eminent speakers and the dignitaries for this particular program. We have with us as a keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Sudeepa Roy Bandyopadhyay, who is a professor of Ancient Indian History and Culture, University of Calcutta. Welcome, Professor Sudeepa Roy, and thank you for your kind presence and agreeing to be one of the main speaker, keynote speaker in this program. I extend a very hearty welcome to you. We have with us other eminent speaker in today's session. We have with us Professor Dr. Mahua Mukherjee, Professor, Department of Dance, Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata. Welcome, Professor Mahua, and thank you for your consent to be part of these discussions. We also have a Professor, Dr. Pika Ghosh, Visiting Associate Professor, Department of Religion, Harvard College, USA. Welcome, Dr. Pika Ghosh, and thank you for your kind presence and be part of these discussion. We have Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana, ex-curator, Museum of Burdwan, University, West Bengal. Thank you, Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana. Now, just have a few words of like introduction about why such symposiums are important. Before I ask Shilpi to further moderate the program and continue with the schedule, we all know that documentation of all our Indian history or culture is very, very important, because that gives an opportunity for future generation to know and understand various arts of this country. And IGNCA, which is one of the premier organizations responsible for documentation of Indian arts in different forms, is always working on these areas. And when we talk about Bengal, Bengal is always known for such rich heritage in all forms. It may be art object, it may be manuscript heritage, uh, paintings, or any kind of art object or art heritage you talk about it. Bengal has always a wonderful or very useful collections in it. So through this particular symposium and the research project, Shilpi is trying to put forward the work and also giving this in form of a publication so it can reach out to the larger audience. So first, I welcome you. Thank you all for this wonderful participation. And now, since Shilpi has joined, I invite Shilpi to further moderate the program. Shilpi, please carry on.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Shilpi Roy, Assistant Professor, Kalanidhi Division, Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. Welcome you all to two-day International Symposium on Terracotta Temple Artwork of Undivided Bengal. We are grateful to have an eminent panel for this symposium. Respected Chairperson of the event, Professor Dr. Sachidanand Joshi, Member Secretary IGNCA, is not present with us today due to some exigency. Professor Dr. Ramesh C. Gaur, Head Kalanidhi Division of IGNCA, will chair the session. I welcome you, sir. Keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Sudipa Bandyopadhyay, and distinguished speakers, Professor Dr. Mahua Mukherjee, Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana, Dr. Pika Ghosh, Dr. Mohammad Saurabhuddin, Dr. Srila Basu, Dr. Mirmoy Ray, Dr. Tithi Chanda, and Dr. Krish Majumdar. I welcome you all once again and thanking all of you for giving us your valuable time for this discussion. This event is a part of research project entitled Documenting Legacy of Terracotta Temple Artwork of Bengal, a case study on Shambhunath Mitra collection of temple artwork of Purba Bardhaman district from the IGNCA Cultural Archives, undertaken by me and funded by Indian Council of Historical Research. IGNCA Cultural Archives has an exclusive collection of more than 17,000 negatives capturing terracotta temple artwork of West Bengal, documented by Sri Shambhunath Mitra. In this research work, I am doing a comparative analysis based on documentation work done by Sri Shambhunath Mitra during 1970 to 2003 relating to present conservation status, vernacular architecture, ethno-archaeological studies on those temples. This symposium is organized to discuss the important aspect of terracotta temple artwork of Undivided Bengal. At first, I invite now Professor Dr. Ramesh C. Gaur to chair the session. I also request sir to launch the virtual exhibition that we have made on Shambhunath Mitra collection.
Pleased to launch this virtual exhibition on Shambhunath Mitra collection.
Among the most remarkable regional groups of sacred monuments in India are the bricks and terracotta temples of Bengal. Despite their relatively modest scale, these temples exhibit a great variety of shape and form. They display a vital sculptural tradition expressed in terracotta reliefs that cover the outer walls. Several thousand of them, these temples, are found throughout Bengal, many now decaying because of severe monsoon rains as well as neglect and vandalism. The truly earthen materials of these bricks and terracotta monuments, in fact, their most vulnerable element. The emergence of a distinctive regional culture in Bengal, especially from the 15th century onward, results in the evolution of a local language and literature, a devotional movement focused on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya, and also a uniquely Bengali art and architecture. At first, coinciding with the period of Islamic rule in Bengal, Hindu revivalism soon expressed itself in the erection of countless sacred monuments that borrowed from earlier temple traditions in Orissa and North India. Even contemporary Islamic techniques and motifs were incorporated. These temples were ornamented with terracotta plaques that completely covered one or more facades, sometimes even extending inside the temple onto the column and walls. As an expression of personal devotion, these temples provided an outlet for the local rajas and wealthy landowners. Built up at the end of the 19th century, the innumerable terracotta temples of Bengal are a vivid testimony of pious patronage as well as artistic inventiveness. The terracotta sculptures themselves even express something of this devotional spirit, not only in their aesthetic rhythm, but also in lively composition. This indeed is a deeply religious architecture and art, always closely related to urban and village life. Typical of many of these temples is in their village setting, the brick turrets of temples soaring above the thatched and carved roofs of the houses. The Bangla word, I think, when the Britishers came, they built bungalows, thatched huts, and all these things. Probably it was something, and it is the Europeans who has given the name. Jod is a twin. And Bangla is a formation of bungalow sort of thing. Maybe. I'm not very sure. That's some learned people has to go in detail and research on it. But nobody up till now, including Professor Saraswati, Kalyan Ganguly, and all the topmost men living and dead, I inquired with it for last 15 years. Nobody could say about it. How many temples are there in Bengal? It's anybody's guess. A foreigner, Professor David McCutcheon of Jadavpur University, took to documentation of them. His 15 years of efforts recorded some 1,465 monuments in both the Bengals. He died at an early age in 1972. It's believed that the number of the temples would be much more than it is documented. To date, I have covered 1900 monuments in 7 districts of West Bengal.
permission from the chair, now we are starting the session. I would like to give a brief introduction of our eminent speakers of today's panel, starting with chairperson of the event, Professor Dr. Ramesh C. Gaur. Professor Gaur is head Kalanidhi Division of IGNCA. Renowned educationist Professor Gaur is at present also serving as acting director of National School of Drama, recipient of prestigious Fulbright Scholarship and several other awards. Professor Gaur is also nominated officer on special duty for the Indian Institute of Heritage and member of two important international committees, namely UNESCO Memory of the World and UNESCO Committee for the Global Action Plan for the Decade of Indigenous Languages. Keynote speaker, Dr. Sudipa Ray Bandhopadhyay is a professor in the Department of Ancient History, Indian History and Culture at the University of Calcutta. She is recipient of honorary fellowship for her research contribution to Bengal art by the International Center for Study of Bengal Art, Dhaka, Bangladesh in 2015. A prolific scholar, Professor Sudipa Ray Bandhopadhyay is author of significant books like Architectural Motifs in Early Medieval Art of Eastern India, 2002, Nataraja Images of Bengal, 2017, Shoiva Iconography, a facet of Indian art and culture, 2018, among others. Today's second speaker, Professor Mahua Mukherjee, is an exponent, pioneer researcher who has revived the Indian classical dance from Gauriya Nritta. He is a senior professor of Department of Dance and former dean of Faculty of Fine Arts at Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata. She served as Fulbright visiting professor at the University of Oklahoma, USA, and the Tagore Chair Professor in University of Dhaka. She has about 20 books and more than 180 articles to her credit. Today's third speaker, Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana, is a famed art historian and social scientist. He was the curator of the Museum and Art Gallery of the University of Burdwan, West Bengal. At present, he is fellow of the Institute of Historical Studies, Department of Higher Education, Government of West Bengal. Today's fourth speaker, Dr. Pika Ghosh, visiting associate professor of South Asian Visual Culture and Religion at the Haverford College, USA. Her research interests range from early modern temple architecture to repurposed textiles of the colonial period, sculpture, ritual, and performance practices in Eastern India. She is the celebrated author of Temple to Love, Indiana University Press, 2005, Making Katha, Making Home, University of Washington Press, 2020, among others. Now I invite Professor Dr. Ramesh C. Gaur to chair the session. Over to you, sir.
Shilpi, since before you joined, I have already addressed it and we are already late, so I don't want to take more time. So let's straightforward invite our keynote speaker to start the program. I will conclude in the end, right?
Now I request Professor Dr. Sudipa Ray Bandhopadhyay, ma'am, to please deliver keynote address.
Thank you. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I must thank you to Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts for inviting me to deliver a lecture for keynote address. So without wasting time, I want to share with you my very short address regarding your theme of the symposium, Terracotta Temple Artwork of Undivided Bengal. So keeping in mind, terracotta is an ancient art form using sun-baked or fired clay. It is found mainly in the Gangetic belt of India, where alluvial soil is abundantly available. Terracotta art forms are broadly of two types. Number one, object in the round, and number two, relief work. Terracotta in the round has a very antiquity. Exquisite specimens of terracotta art have been found from Mehergarh, a civilization older than the Harappan civilization. From that period onward, artists have been producing terracotta art of some kind or the other in every century and every region. Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just I'm trying to change. Terracotta art, which can be considered as a form of visual text, provides valuable insights into the socio-cultural and religious life of a period. Bengal offers a rich variety of terracotta art. No other place in the country offers a richer variety. Bengal here refers to undivided Bengal, that is West Bengal and what is now Bangladesh. In Bengal, terracotta artifacts are mostly chance finds. Very few have been found from the stratigraphic levels of different excavated sites. Stella Cramdish has classified these artifacts into two types, ageless type and timed variation. The first one mainly includes figurines of the mother goddess with or without children in a very crude and simplified style. The second variety includes molded form bearing the stylistic traits of the particular period. The techniques used in terracotta art are of two kinds, hand-pressed and molded. Sculptures in the round use both these techniques. Hand-pressed objects are made when the clay is wet, then they are dried in natural weather and kiln-burnt in most cases, and sun-baked in some cases. Molded plaques are commonly used in the case of terracotta relief work. Terracotta relief work of the early historical period sometimes shows the feet of the figure as projecting outward. The artist, it seems, tried to impart a three-dimensional effect of a two-dimensional piece. Figures with protruding feet are widely seen in Chandraketugarh and Tamluk, two well-known terracotta sites of Bengal. Large-sized terracotta plaques have been found from Panna and Harinarayanpur in the districts of Paschim Medinipur and South 24 Parganas respectively. In the case of sculpture in the round, artists tried to achieve a similar effect by using double molds. Double molds were widely used in making rattles and sometimes also to make human figurines. Such specimens have been found from Harinarayanpur, Tamluk, and Chandraketugarh, three well-known terracotta art producing centers of early Bengal. Most of the terracotta art objects of the early period are hand-pressed, and they are mainly associated with cult figurines, male figures and animal figures. Mostly chance finds, they are preserved in various museums and private collections. A large number of terracotta artifacts of the early historical period have been found from Chandraketugarh, Deulpota, Harinarayanpur, Mangalkot, Pokhanna, Tamluk, Pandurajadhibi, Natshell, etc. Among the artifacts found, hand-pressed female figurines are quantitatively higher than their male counterparts. This period shows the use of the applique technique in terracotta art for the depiction of eyes, ornaments, hairstyles, etc. on the figurines. Some terracotta relief works of the period were made for ritualistic purposes. Most art historians identify the female figures in the reliefs with Sri Lakshmi. However, some female figures with pancha or dashachuras found from Chandraketugarh cannot be ignored. Cannot be clearly identified with any deity. They are probably figures of Jakshinis. Some winged figures are also found in Bengal terracotta reliefs. The figure most commonly seen in terracotta rattles is pot-bellied Kuber. There are different types of terracotta images of Kubero and Jambhala, holding either a purse or a tail or neck of the mongoose. Few pot-bellied Jakshas are also found in the terracotta repertoire of Undivided Bengal. Amorous couples, that is Mithuna Murtis, have also been noticed in early Bengal terracotta reliefs. Some terracotta reliefs found from Chandraketugarh and Tamluk depict stories of some popular folklore. A rectangular and partially broken terracotta plaque from Chandraketugarh depicts a scene from the Beshantar Jataka. Due to stone-made art gaining more popularity in the early and early medieval period, the production of terracotta artifacts declined during this period. Life-size human heads, the head of a Barahi-like image from Panna in Paschim Medinipur, the torso of a figure from Harinarayanpur in South 24 Parganas, a terracotta plaque from Mahasangar, Bangladesh, with some narrative depicted on it, are some of the major finds of the period. The motifs and features appearing in the terracotta art of this period can easily be identified with the iconographic features mentioned in the iconographic text of the period. Some theistic cult icons, such as that of Shiva, Vishnu, Baraho Avatar, Narasingha Avatar, Matrika images, etc., in both terracotta and stone have been found from this period. Besides this, there are some specimens where one can visualize the strong contours and massive forms. From this period onward, large-sized terracotta plaques were introduced in some Buddhist monastic sites, such as Vasubia, Nihar Mahasthangarh in Bangladesh, etc. Religious patronage extended from the common people to the royalty and other aristocratic classes. Each and every photographs cannot be shown in a very short time, but I would like to show you some sort of slides. Smaller size terracotta in the round was gradually replaced by larger size reliefs during the early medieval period. A large number of terracotta plaques have been unearthed from Paharpur, Moinamoti, Jagaddal, Bharatbaina, Mahasthangarh, and Jagjibanpur. This terracotta art mainly evolved between the 8th and 12th century under the Palashian rulers of Bengal. Most of the terracotta plaques of this period belong to the Buddhist religion. These plaques were used for decorative purposes on walls of the plains and lower terraces of the buildings. In Paharpur, the plaques were found attached to the structure, whereas in Jagjibanpur, they are not in situ, but heaped in a place on a mound. In Paharpur, all the terracotta plaques are different. There is no repetition of theme. Paharpur also produced different types of Shiva imagery. Depictions of the Shabaro lifestyle, folk tales, narrative themes, hunting episodes, etc. are very common. Harvesting scenes and depictions of bullock cart have been found from Bhojo Bihar at Moinamoti in Bangladesh. Terracotta artists also depicted various types of animals, winged animals, and hybrid figures like an animal with the head of a goat and the body of a leopard. Most of the terracotta plaques from Jagjibanpur depict warriors. Among all the terracotta plaques of the early medieval period, the ones found from Paharpur, Moinamoti, Jagjibanpur display the most variety. There was a long gap of almost 500 years between the early medieval and late medieval periods. In this period, which may be called the medieval period, terracotta reliefs can be seen in Islamic architecture. The motifs are mostly vegetal ornamentations, abstract decorations, geometric patterns, and floral designs. There are no figural depictions of living beings. The Hindu monuments of the period also bear such motifs along with figural representations. Temples with terracotta panels depicting various Brahminical themes were revived in the late medieval period. Such temples have also been found in Dinajpur, Rajshahi, Sirajganj, Kumilla, Pabna, and Faridpur in Bangladesh. Most of the plaques in the temples in these places are in situ. Some, however, are preserved in museums. In most of the temples of the 18th, 19th centuries, terracotta plaques have been found on the facade of the temples. They mainly depict various architectural motifs, vegetal ornamentations, flora, fauna, etc. Sometimes terracotta panels are also found on the right and left sides of the temple. Battle scenes from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, various Puranic episodes, scenes from Mangala Kabba, and social religious themes, scenes from contemporary society are depicted in these panels. Terracotta plaques in the temples of Bishnupur also depict different aspects of Bengal society and culture. In the colonial period, we see the new themes like the lifestyle of the Europeans and scenes of the emerging Babu culture depicted in the terracotta panels. In the second half of the 19th century, terracotta art witnessed the radical changes. David McCutcheon points out that from the middle of the 19th century, motifs of terracotta art were replaced by stucco, that is called Pankher Kaj, and plaster, that is Chunabalir Kaj. In a few cases, particularly in the Birbhum and Bardhaman districts of West Bengal, terracotta was replaced with fine-grained stone. K.N. Dixit, Niharanjan Rai, and S.K. Saraswati did some important studies on the early medieval terracotta art of Bengal. The first most comprehensive study of societal themes in terracotta art was done by Shahanara Hussain. Other scholars whose contributions deserve special mention are Guru Sadai Datta, O.C. Ganguly, Mukul De, David McCutcheon, Narendranath Bhattacharya, Omiyo Kumar Bandyopadhyay, Tarapada Shatra, Hitesh Ranjan Sanyal, Julekha Hawk, and Pranav Roy. To preserve this terracotta art, conservation work is very important. I, along with my 4 research scholars, recently visited the terracotta temples spread across the Birbhum and Hooghly districts of West Bengal. Most of the temples are maintained by the State Archaeology Department of West Bengal and the Archaeological Survey of India. They are following 2 different techniques of conservation, but the conservation techniques that are being followed in temples maintained by local bodies and or trustees are absolutely shocking. In some cases, they have used cement for plastering the damaged portions of the temple and then lime washed or painted it with fanciful colors. Some have covered the entire temple with glossy tiles, and some have demolished the old structure altogether and built a small puja room in its place for worshipping the family deity. To preserve this unique art, it is very important to make common people more aware of the various methods and techniques of conservation. This is the panels, what type of panels we are getting from the terracotta art, and just you see 2 or 3 examples of it. I am not showing, not possible at all showing all the terracotta art, but few of them I would like to show you. This is the just, you see that they have renovated these temples and will do the renovate here after few years. The panelists who would be speaking at this seminar have done extensive research on the terracotta art of Bengal. Now we look forward to hearing from them. I am sure all of us attending this online symposium will be enriched by their knowledge in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Sudeepa Ray Bandyopadhyay, ma'am, for informative talk. Now, taking permission from the chair, I would like to invite our second speaker. Mahua ma'am, are you there? I do not find Mahua ma'am. So I request Professor Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana to deliver his speech.
Shilpi, I leave the already left the share screen, stop screen. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
I stopped my screen. Okay.
Yes,
Okay. Now I'm trying to off my video.
I request Dr. Pika Ghosh to deliver her lecture. Pika ma'am, over to you. Pika ma'am.
Yes.
Please deliver your lecture.
Okay. Yes, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank Shilpi for inviting me to participate in this online symposium to recognize the importance of the work done by Shambhunath Mitra. Shambhu Mitra was very important to me when I first started doing my PhD research in the 1990s. You know, not only because of the materials that he shared, but for his extraordinary generosity of spirit. He always replied to my preliminary letters of inquiry when I was defining my topic in the beginning with immense enthusiasm and support. And, you know, in hindsight, I'm sorry I did not save those blue aerogram envelopes that are just such a relic from the past now. He also gave me pragmatic information to facilitate fieldwork, how to go, how to take particular kinds of photographs when I was first starting out. And I visited his home many times in Shonatikri in those years. And he would not only project his slides and share information, but his whole family was so kind to me, with many lunches and many invitations to stay back and come back and make myself another home at Shonatikri. But in the end, I did my work at Bishnupur. And so that's where I will focus again today. At Bishnupur, in that southwestern corner of Bengal, a very distinctive form of temples emerged in the 17th century, fueled by the religious fervor inspired by Srinivas Acharya, the disciple of Chaitanya's Goswamis, who gradually came to be identified himself with Chaitanya and thereby Krishna. Here, Srinivas cultivated a following among the local Malla rulers, the court, and the community. Brick temples dedicated to Krishna were densely adorned, extraordinarily lavishly covered with terracotta, inscribing important Vaishnava narratives as well as others in frames of floral imagery. Many temples in this region, though, were also constructed of a local laterite, a material that did not quite allow for that same wealth of detail to be lavished on the surfaces. Together, the architectural experiments contributed to mapping a Vaishnava mandala in the region that the texts of the community claim had been a wilderness previously. This construction thus created a physical space where a new community gathered to focus on remembering Krishna, to live in his presence, as advocated by the Goswamis and their disciples in many of the texts, most important being the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So today I'd like to explore with you the significance of imagery on these temple walls to make divine presence felt in these courtyards. A distinctively Gaudiya image, the Rash Mandal or the Ras Mandala, Krishna's circle dance with the gopis, features very prominently at Bishnupur. And indeed, this is one of the earliest architectural settings where we find this image in Bengal. A closer look indicates that their use on these temples suggests their potential to stimulate intense devotional experiences of the kind that we find described so vividly and intimately in Gaudiya poetry, the songs, the hagiographic texts about the saints' experiences as spiritual transformations. And such images, visualizing a model then for Kirtan, the distinctive Gaudiya practice, thereby contributed to a bodily and spiritual transformation. And the kingdom, Mallabhum, thus came to be identified as Bon Vrindavan or Gupta Vrindavan. At the Shamrai temple, the oldest dated of these brick temples, at the site, to still remain standing in good condition, is a pair of these large, exquisitely detailed Rash Mandal. They flank the main entrance into the temple sanctum here, as you see on either side. This deliberate placement draws attention at eye level to the significant changes that had occurred in temple architecture. These include, most importantly, for my purposes, the incorporation of a large courtyard, enclosed for collective devotional practices, which was aligned with the deities in the sanctum on the south side of the structure. This directional reorientation marks a break from the traditional east-facing, curvilinear towered temples of the Nagara style, or called Deul in this region, which you see on the left. And I'm showing you one from the neighboring Bardhaman district at Borakor, one of the earliest ones. And this one is actually a stone temple on the left. Instead, now in the 17th century, set symmetrically on either side of the entrance of the Shamrai temple is the Rash Mandala, linking the projecting curve above, echoing the elegant curve of the cornice, a distinctive feature of Bengal, of course, appropriate from the sagging thatch of local huts and also shared with sultanate, shrines and mosques, branding this curvature as Bengali. At the center of each circle, Krishna raises a flute to his lips with Radha to the right and an attendant on the left. 2 rows of dancers encircle them, rendering that dance infinite in a circular form. Drummers and flute players at the corners provide the music, and creepers, deer, and peacocks are drawn to the music. They hover at the periphery, identifying the performance in the woods of Vrindavan. The innermost circle here inscribes the figures of Radha and Krishna and the attendant. And this is very distinctive of the Gaudiya tradition, to have Radha embedded at the very heart of the Leela. This frontal presentation distinguishes the intimate space for the figures who are in the outer, from the outer circles. This shift in perspective reinforces 2 different aspects of the divine. At the center, Krishna is present and accessible for the viewer as he is for Radha and the devotee. In the outer circles, some of those bodies tip awkwardly, others turn upside down, creating some distance. Together with the repetition of the god in the outer circles, the dancers undercut a sense of the exclusiveness and immediacy that we feel at the center. At the same time, these precariously suspended bodies reinforce that Krishna manifested himself for each gopi to fulfill her desire to be with him, and he holds out that same promise to the beholder at the site. Through changing viewpoints, then, the mandal thus simultaneously assures the viewer of Krishna's real presence, while also expressing his omnipresence, omnipotence, Aishwarya, in this miracle of infinite reduplication that we know from the Bhagavad Puran first. A 3rd medallion fills the back of the sanctum that is visible between the 2 outer walls through that triple-arched doorway. And I show you on the right the location of this image. These large panels, their prominent placement indicates the significance of this image to this devotional community that was gathering in the Vishnupur region in the 17th century. Together, the circles would have mobilized the body of the stationary, stable Krishnamurti that had once lived in this temple. Today, of course, the temple is no longer the residence of Shambrai. The Murti, along with many others, is worshipped in the home shrine of the Vishnupur Raj, which you see on the right-hand side. But the living gods of the town in the other temples, let us imagine how this altar may also have displayed the divine couple. If the swaying motion that distinguishes the sinuous bodies of such icons are concealed by garlands and garments, it is the terracotta reliefs that recreate the hallowed circles of dancers and the momentum, the rhythm of that dance visually. They visualize the devotional aesthetic to move the devotee, the worshipper, into sharing in the heady emotional upsurge of the dance and music with Krishna. Rupa Goswami had identified bhakti rasa and classified these practices for achieving such a state of devotion. And far from the esoteric, he recognized rasa as latent in the conventional modes of worship, including serving an icon, reading Krishna's biography, singing kirtan, and living in the region of Braj. Such practices would gradually give rise to the desire to actively enter and participate in Krishna's life, a mode of veneration that they called Raganuga Bhakti. Smaller versions of the circles of dancers underline many of the surfaces of this temple, including here, I show you on the right, the undersurface of the arched entranceway. Here, these circles are themselves embedded within rows of dancing figures and drummers, many holding hands even, and reaching out to each other as if creating that circle, proliferating to populate the vaulted ceiling of the porch of space that is inhabited by worshippers today. These terracotta dancers would have framed the worshippers overhead as they were entering the covered veranda to get darshan and worship. While older Nagara temples had marked this liminal threshold with images of guardians and attendants who protect the god inside, these Gaudiya temples now use imagery to emphasize visually the continuity from outside to in and from the worshipper to Krishna. And here is a second version of these rows of dancers wrapping the arches that support the pillars at the entranceway. These still renditions would have complemented Kirtan, singing to the rhythm of the drums and cymbals, sometimes with spontaneous movement, such as swaying with hands raised, feet stomping, as do these performances in temple courtyards in Vishnupur after the evening Arati. Such participation among the community of worshippers would transform the temple into a Vaishnava Mandala, a Braj region, again, for worshippers to inhabit the space of Krishna and be living within his entourage and life. And as the music of Kirtan overflows beyond compound walls into the nights, it resonates with descriptions of Chaitanya's own Sankirtan from a century earlier. At one session, we find described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishna Das Kaviraj. For example, around the Jagannath temple in Puri, and I quote, Prabhu raised his arms and said, Bol, Bol, and the people, floating in Ananda, raised the sound of Hari. Now he fell in a faint and he had no more breath. And suddenly he stood up again and shouted. He was thick with goose flesh. His teeth chattered so that it seemed they would fall out on the ground. As time went on, Prabhu became increasingly absorbed in Ananda. The third watch, Prahar, of the night came, and still the dancing did not end. A sea of Ananda welled up in all the people, and everyone forgot their bodies, their selves, and their homes. The song in this case that Chaitanya had requested, an Uriya song, gives rise to joy, and that is now recognized as reverence. It spreads through his body, his limbs being saturated, and it manifests externally in movement, fainting, shaking, tears. These bodily transformations highlight the essentially multisensorial experience of Bhakti Rasa. At the Radhesham temple in Vishnupur, Chaitanya's dynamic dance is visualized in the sanctum itself, in these large figures. Their bent knees, raised arms, flying shawls and sashes of these vividly painted and bold figures of Chaitanya and Nityananda projecting from the wall behind Radha and Krishna not only assert their equivalence through superimposition, that Gaur and Nitai are now recognized as identical and hence incarnations of these gods, but they animate or activate them, infusing the stability of three-dimensional icons with a new life and movement, making them palpably present for the community in the courtyards that gathered for Kirtan at Vishnupur. The lyrics of 17th and 18th century songs underscore this bodily experience of rasa in the temples. And when sung in these courtyards, such songs would surely have moved Krishna's body into dancing with and for the beholder. And I quote one version from Shukumar Sen's translation. Sham, who delights in the sport of Rash, dances in charming steps and with delightful movements of the body. Lutes and other musical instruments are being played. Drums, mridanga, are raising a beautiful note. Tata thoi thoi thoi. Kanu raises a charming music with his lovely anklets, and Radha is singing a fine melody in proper beats and harmony. Shivaram has lost his consciousness in joy and is looking at the embodiment of rasa. Krishna, in the poet Shivaram's version, is exulting in the sheer joy of his own moving body. The stomping of his feet keeps the beat as much as the drums, lute, anklets, and Radha's singing. Each shift in his bodily position reverberates as his body turns, responding in quickening steps. And that increasing momentum enhances his pleasure, impels him further, and through the process, he comes to embody rasa. The signature line, Bhanita, of this song suggests that the poet, as he recreates the dance through his composition, feels the melody, beat, and movement with such force that it overcomes him. Singers and audience alike would have known that he could only have had such privileged access to the play of the gods as a gopi. As he submits to the emotion, awareness of his physical surroundings and his own body slips away. The poet moves swiftly and seamlessly so that it is difficult to distinguish one viewpoint from the other. And only in the final lines does he testify to his own presence in the Leela and reveals to us his identity as Gopi. And his response offers a model for Kirtan singers to participate in the Leela that he evokes through his poetic composition. Such songs performed in Kirtan in temples must have reverberated, echoed the movement that is visualized in swaying terracotta, the forms of Krishna and the gopis in the mandala. So it is no surprise that this swaying, sensuous form of Krishna, capable of stimulating such intense response, is honored in these early Gaudiya temples as the primary focus of devotion, both in the altar and in terracotta. Foregrounded on this earliest standing Krishna temple of the Malla Rajas, the Rash Mandal also commemorates the founding of the kingdom of Bishnupur itself, and the first critical stronghold in consolidating a Gaudiya realm in this region. As the narrative is retold in this region today, Srinivas Acharya, a disciple of the Vrindavan Goswamis, was traveling with a cartload of books from North India. And when he stopped in this area, the charismatic guru converted the local king, Bir Hambir, to Krishna worship. He did so partly by introducing the king to the potency of the Rash Mandal. You see him here, depicted at the very top of the set of Vishnu's incarnations, suggesting that he was incorporated into that lineage by the time. This temple was constructed in 1655. Srinivas's cartload of books was stolen while he rested, and in tracking them down, he arrived at the local court. Here he recited the Rash Leela part of the Bhagavad Puran and offered his explanation. His oration was so moving that the king was weeping by the end. He fell at his feet and recognized Srinivas as his teacher and dedicated his life to championing these worship practices that were introduced by Srinivas. So here on these royal temples, in these circles of dancers, we find celebrated and commemorated that spiritual transformation of the king and his realm, and indeed with it the political fortunes of the dynasty. On the eastern wall of the Shamrai temple, this reformulation of the temple itself is flamboyantly heralded across a set of terracotta panels at eye level. The deity icons in the central frame are inside the curved chala arch of the shrine, now established between two circles of the Rashmandal, visualizing that relationship between the static icons and the dancing circles of figures. Such prominent placement of the Rashmandal in the temple's visually and ritually most important spaces asserts in no uncertain terms that the temple and the kingdom were now dedicated to Krishna. In mirroring the performance of Kirtan, the mandal would have accentuated the process by which this distance between the eternal dance in the celestial Vrindavan and the historical present of a new community finding its place. The structures that follow continue to play with this Rashleela image in its most potent spaces. At the Madan Mohan temple of 1694, for example, we find two circles of the Rashmandal on the spandrels of the arched entrance directly above the sanctum, framing the beholder's view of the gods inside. Here again, the figures of dancers across the surface reiterate that the divine dance was by no means limited to an exclusive set of gopis holding hands, but rather that song, dance, and rasa overflow from the gods into the visualized terracotta community as well as the living ones gazing upon these images. On the outer walls of this temple, panels of these dancing figures and musicians create circles around the entrance pillars, giving access into the sacred space of the sanctum. These swaying bodies also create a dynamic backdrop for the space of kirtan by the community in the courtyard. Many of Bishnupur's living temples also have sets of the 8 painted wooden figures of the gopis, the select set of Radha's companions who supported her various activities with Krishna. They are brought out from storage, dressed up, and set up on either side of this divine couple for celebrations, including Dol, Rath, and Rash. Extending outwards from the central pair, they evoke that continuous circle of the terracotta dance that we have seen. The arc of this arrangement, open at both ends, suggests a circle that extends from the outstretched arms at the two ends of the courtyard into the worshippers, sweeping the gathering community into the divine embrace that is promised in the imagery. The composition thus expresses the intensely bodily, sensorial, and emotional experiences of negotiating sacred presence and absence, hiddenness and revelation, and miraculous reduplication that is at the theological core of the Raslila. Terracotta imagery on the walls of these mid-17th century Bengali temples must therefore be recognized as dynamic, interacting with worshippers to imaginatively recreate Krishna's Leela. The sculpted surfaces bring that original dance into the courtyard for a new generation of worshippers to be moved, to be inspired, as had Chaitanya himself and Srinivas after him at this site. Such spaces blur the distinctions between inside and out, between sculpture and architecture. That is to say, divine presence must have been shared across the murti in the sanctum, the imagery on the walls, and the bodies of singing and dancing worshippers in an exhilarating overflow of rasa. Terracotta imagery thus would have animated a Vaishnava mandala at Bishnupur, from where we know it expanded across the southwestern corner of Bengal, connecting with other regional centers from Puri to the west to Navadvip in the east. Thank you.
Wonderful lecture Pika Ghosh. Now, taking permission from the chair, I request Professor Mahua Mukherjee ma'am to deliver lecture.
Thank you. Namaskar. It's a great pleasure for me. Thanks to the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts for delivering this auspicious international terracotta sculptural dancing sculptures. My topic is static terracotta dancing sculpture and dynamic Gauriya Nritya of Bengal, the interrelation. Dance is one of the most ancient contribution of man's culture. It is a vital part of our all auspicious occasions, and Gauriya Nritya plays an important role in these occasions. Gauriya Nritya was also a temple dance. The sculpture manifests the principle of multiplicity and unity on the spiritual, philosophic, and aesthetics planes. When the structures or temples with more and more figures became a practice, dance and music provided scope for sculpture to create the images of free movements and attractive poses instead of stereotyped icons with little differences in attributes and features. Bengal terracotta is common and most popular medium of the artistic expression of the people since early times. Earth or clay is regarded as a permeable plastic material, not only because of its ready availability, but also an account of its easy tractability. Baked clay or terracotta has thus served as an easy and convenient plastic material from time immemorial. Apart from aesthetic significance, the terracotta art in its varied uses and applications supply invaluable data for a study of the culture of the people of this land. The Bengal School of Terracotta Sculpture expresses the dancing mode, shows dancing postures, thanakas, aharyam, hasta, rasa, ayudha, etc. The relationship of the physical gesture to a mental quality, mood, or state gives Bengal sculpture its distinctive character, and it reflects the dance technique of There is a close relationship between sculpture and dance. The following sloka of Vishnu Dharmottar Purana states the valid point of this view. Chitra sutrang najanati yastu sammat naradhipa pratima lakshmanang betung na shakyang tena kahirchita. According to Markandeya Purana, Bina tu nritta shastrena chitra sutrang sudurvidam jagatanu kriya karya dayo rapi jato nripa nritta shastrang samachaksha chitra sutrang badishyasi nritta shastrena vidhanagrish chitrang betti jato dijo. So there is a close relationship between the Pratima Lakshmana, the painting, and a dance. It's also mentioned in Vishnu Dharmottar Purana. The importance of passage quoted above gives an idea of the relation and interdependence of various arts. So the sculpture remained mute yet irrefutable proof of dance of this fertile land. Approximately, Bengal has three different prominent era of terracotta dancing sculptures. Number one, circa 4th century BC to 2nd century AD. Number two, 9th century AD to 10th century AD. And the third one, terracotta temples with dancing sculpture from 16th century to 18th century AD. So 4th century BC to 2nd century AD, approximately Maurya, Shunga, Kushan period. Few identified spots of that period are Oshurgad, North Dinajpur district, Bahiri, Birbhum district, and Bahiri, Medinipur district, Bangor, South Dinajpur, Bharatpur, Bardhaman district, Wari Boteshwar of Bangladesh, Chandraketugad, Tamralipto, Deulpota, Bihar, Farakka of Murshidabad Dhosa, Govardhanpur, Gosaba, Harinarayanpur of Khavda, Harinarayanpur of South Chobbish Pargona, Harishpur, and so many places. So now I would like to show few sculpture little and along with dance figures. Next slide, please. This is 4th century BC from Chandraketu God. I'm grateful to late Dr. Niranjan Goswami, the curator, former curator of Ashutosh Museum, Calcutta University. Now I would like to show the figures of that Ardha Mandala Stha. This is Sthanaka. We have 33 numbers. So I'm showing a few of them. This is Ardha Mandala Sthanaka. I'm taking the help of my student. He is doing PhD on dancing sculpture, terracotta sculpture. This Ardha Mandala Sthanaka. This is from Chandraketu God locality, and a light, probably some king or great musician playing Katyani Veena. Next one, please. Again, this is from 1st century BC to 2nd century AD. I'm grateful to Professor Dr. Gautam Sengupta. Here, again, the dancer with a big belt in this. This is Aharyam. We have 3 Abhinaya according to Natya Shastra: Angika, Vachika, Swatika, Aharyam. So this is again the Aharyam, the Katibandhar belt, and the dancer with Ardhamandali Sthanaka, which already shown by my students Shomubhumi, and the musician, the great musician probably, sitting on throne and playing Katyani Veena type. This string instrument. Next, please. This is again from Bardhaman Museum. I'm grateful to Rangan Kanti Jana, the curator of Bardhaman Museum. Many years ago, I visited that museum. And here, the dancer with Nitamba Hasta sitting in Vrishavasanam Sthanak. I'm showing that. This is Vrishavasanam Sthanak with Nitamba Hasta, and dancer with Kanur Khopa. This means the one side of the ear. And back, one is elite, someone is watching her dance with Utsangahasta or and with very gracious and elegant, and eye is so big, and lips are very with full of Shringar Rasa, and with bangle and the Griva Angada in necklace, beautiful necklace, this Griva Angada, and the bangle and earring, big earring. Next, please. This is again from Bardhaman Museum. The drummer is beating drum like today's dhap, with both sticks is beating, and the dancer with Ek Janu Gatan Sthanak. Little some Ek Janu Gatan. Yes. Yes, Ek Janu Gatan Sthanak, and holding the vest with hands. This is male dancer, and he wore the Kanti. So this is from 4th century BC to 2nd century AD. I have shown few slides. Next, now come to the point, circa 9th century AD to 10th century AD. We know that period is Pala period, very vibrant period, and it is very famous for their sculpture, as well both in terracotta and as well as metal and stone. And especially location Jagjibanpur, Malda district of West Bengal, Paharpur, Mahasthangarh, Moinamoti of Bangladesh, and many other places. So next, please. This is from Paharpur, 9th century AD, dancing sculptures. Yes, this is our special sthana. This is Vishak sthana and Dardura sthana. So there is so many terracotta plaques, only two I'm showing here. This is from Paharpur again. The next one, please. Next one from Jagjivanpur again. And I'm grateful to Professor Dr. Gautam Sengupta. After discovery of this Jagjivanpur, he has given me so many slides. I'm so grateful. Here, this Kapitva Hasta in left hand, Kapitva Hasta and Dola Hasta in right, and Kunchita Pada. Yes, with curly hair, big earring, and Ardha Kantivesha, and Kati Vandha, and Griva Angada in necklace, and also Orna or Uttariya hanging in both sides. And the dancer is full of very elegant posture, grace, and as well as Shringar, full of Shringar. Next slide, please. This is warrior word dance from again Jagjivanpur, 9th century AD, holding shield and sword in right hand with a beaded garland vest and with dhoti, little dhoti, and with kunchita pada. Next, please. Again, drummer is beating drum. It's an instrument player. Still now, it's prevailed in our Bengal. The dance with drum and with again curly hairs, a big earring. This drum is hurukka type. So next, I come to the point, terracotta temples with dancing sculptures of 16th century to 18th century AD. This is first one. It is Great Rash Manchu from Bishnupur. There are so many dancing sculptures are depicted in the walls and pillars. It is 16th century, built by Hambir Maldo. Next one, please. Again, this is from Shamrai Temple of 1643. And this is Rash Mandali. We have three types of Ras Nritya: Tal Rash, Dando Rash, Mandal Rash. Tal Rash, it's clapping, and Dando Rash with stick, and Mandal Rash, circular movement. And it is Halisaka Nritya. So in middle, the Krishna is here along with two Shakhis, and the circular movement. This is 1 and 2 big. And this is very famous in Shamrai Temple, this Rash Nritya. And it's also, you can see in many places in Bengal, this Tal Rash, Dando Rash, or Kathi Nach. We call it Kathi Nach. Next, please. This is against Shamrai Temple, Pancharatna. It's in Bishnupur. And this is Jor Bangla temple. Here, the pillar is full of, and we have three types of dancing sculptures. One, Nartan Veda is three types: Nritya, Nritya, Natya. So Nritya is pure dance. Nritya is depicting, the Bhava Vinaya, the full of sentiments, etc. And Natya is story narrative. So all these temples, they have three types of dance postures: Nritya, Nritya, and Natya. Natya means the Putana, Moksha, or Vastra Harana, or Nauka Vilash. So many. This is post Chaitanya eras temples. Next. And I would like to mention, this is dancing on earthen pot. This, I'm showing we dance above the earthen pot. So it is mentioned in our Shastra called Nalika Nritya, and also in Manashamangala Kabbo, Behula Nritya kore awaaz sharate bhor diya. And you can see in the temples, terracotta temples, so, and the dancer is dancing because, and with instruments, string instruments they're playing. Next, please. Dancer along with Uchrita Bahu, raising their both hands, and with Kunchita Pada, and with Mekhula dress. Mekhula means not Assamese Mekhula. Mekhula means which is covering our vest. This is called Mekhula. So this is our Mekhula Besh. We have three types of costume: Kanchi, dhoti type, Mekhula, and Shari, Shatika. And again, dancing on one foot on the arden pot, top of the arden pot, another on the floor. That way too. Just see, and with Shruta Bahu, the it's unison between Jivatma and Paramatma. So we use this type of posture in our Bandhana Nritya. Next, please. Again, the drummer, that means percussion instrument, the vertical percussion instrument called Mridanga. We use that, and this is story narrative part. This Agashur Bodh, Bakashur Bodh, and Dhenukashur Bodh, and so many story narrative part. So we have, I have already mentioned that's Natya. This is our Natya, and Devadasi dancing. Devadasi dancers are dancing, and there are so several sculptural evidences in temple from 3rd century AD. This is 16th century in Shamrai temple. This flying whisk in right hand and Pushpatali in left. Just see, this is the sculpture with Kanchi. You can correlate along with Bharatanatyam costume. This is 16th century, and it's also mentioned in our Sangeet Damodar of Bengal students. So, and we are using so many hastas, this Pushpaputa, Mushti, Pataka, and this is cross-legged, the Swastika and three Bhangima. So we have 4 types of Bhangi: Sama, Abhanga, Tribhanga, Atibhanga, which is also giving us the idea from sculpture as well as the Shastras. So our temple is full of these dancing sculptures. This Mahamridanga and Uchruta Bahu duet dancer. So we have solo dancer, duet dancer, group dancer. Krishna Lila and Govindaji temple of Putia, Bangladesh. And this is Kantoji Mandir of 18th century from Dinajpur of Bangladesh. It had 9 Navaratna temple, but somehow it's destroyed. And this is Putana Moksha. We do that. This story part, story narrative part, Natya, Putana Badha, Putana Moksha. So this all from these 3 phases, which is enriching us, these terracotta panels. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, ma'am, for your informative talk. Now, taking permission from the chair, I invite last speaker of today's session, Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana.
Good afternoon, respected Chairman, sir, and the viewers or listeners, as well as Dr. Shilpi Roy, Mahua Di, Sudipa Rai, and Pika Ghosh. But we are assembled here mainly by Dr. Shilpi Roy in this particular occasion. I have been working on Undivided Bengal, particularly on temple terracotta plaques from last 10 years. And accidentally, Shilpi Roy accidentally found me and made some connection with me regarding my work as well as some coordination. In this connection, I am here today. The title of my paper is Omen on the Late Medieval Temple Terracotta Plaques, Bardhaman Districts. I use districts because now it is divided into Purba Bardhaman and Paschim Bardhaman. This particular presentation is dealt with the temple terracotta plaques of the late medieval period in the districts of Purba and Paschim Bardhaman in the present state of West Bengal of independent India. The time frame has already been mentioned as the late medieval period, that is, broadly the late 16th century CE onward till the end of the 19th century. Following the ground survey, it is revealed that the tradition of burnt brick temple building existed till the end of the 19th century CE. So I included up to the 19th century, end of the 19th century here. Among these temples, most were decorated with terracotta plaques. It is interesting to note that these plaques bear varied subjects comprising religio-cultural and social life. Apart from the geometric motifs and floral designs, the subject matters can be divided into two broad classes, namely the religious and the socio-cultural life. In connection with the religious depiction, there were the different stages of Lord Krishna's life, various Hindu Puranic gods and goddesses, story from the two epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Till now, I didn't find any story panel of the Mahabharata within the geographical space of Bardhaman. Sri Chaitanya Deva's Hindu Bhakti movement, and in case of non-religious plaques, the subject matters confined into the daily life of rural and urban Bengal. A subsection can also be made on the basis of the available data, the foreign socio-cultural elements, which were depicted by the artisans with the incoming of the various European trading communities in Bengal, as well as the surveyed geographical space too during the stipulated period. Number of scholars contributed books, monographs, and research papers in English and Bengali, which I have incorporated in my paper. So I am not going to discuss these things. In case of undivided Bardhaman districts, David Macachan, Tarapada Shatra, Shambhunath Mitra, and myself have done analytical study. Shambhunath Mitra's work is quite important in this regard to know the geographical space. But Mr. Mitra, in his analytical study, did not give any view about the position of women as depicted by the artisan on the terracotta plaques. The present study is going to focus some light on the depiction of women on the terracotta plaques within the aforesaid geographical space. Subject-wise, it can be divided into two broad sections, namely the religious and non-religious aspects. These terracotta plaques obviously bear reflections of the artisan's mind through their creation. Presently, those temples are selected which have dated inscriptions. It is only to correlate the time and space with the information which cater by the artisans through the various plaques. Question may arise, why in the present study only 14 temple terracotta specimens have been incorporated? It is only to concise the discussion in the light of the 14 terracotta plaques which bear woman as a figure within the stipulated period. Subject-wise, terracotta plaques which bear women can be classified into several classes, namely Krishna Lila, Shakta goddess, Shakti goddesses, Ramayana story, social life scenes, and foreign elements. Krishna's life story, I have incorporated 3 temple terracotta plaques. Figure 1, the killing of Putana. Figure 1, the killing of Putana. The killing of Putana by sucking her breast, showing the respective volumes of little Krishna and the demoness. Apart from the main subjects, the attendants of little Krishna are properly dressed and ornamented. Figure number 2. The foster mother preparing butter in presence of child Krishna. Figure number 3. The depiction of Barai, the old woman with the gopinis before Krishna as a compassionate petitioner. It shows artisans actually sensitively to carve the old woman. In case of Ramayana, I selected one, that is figure number 4. Visual Sita is seated with the throne, on the throne, or with her husband, escorted by Hanuman, Sugriva, and Lakshmana. In the figure, in the Shiva and Parvati, I have selected 3 terracotta plaques. First one, the marriage of Shiva, figure number 5. Figure number 5. Shiva and Parvati with little Ganesh, figure number 6. Parvati comforting the addicted Shiva by a fan is a very peculiar one, figure number 7. In 3 terracotta plaques, the depiction of Parvati are quite susceptible. Particularly, the last one does reflect the balance of depiction and the relation between the husband and wife. There is obviously a difference between the Puranic concept of Shiva and the popular folk concept of Shiva. The artisan had followed the folk concept. In case of Shakti goddesses and minor folk goddesses, I have selected 3. First one is figure number 8, Mahishasuramardini. Figure 9, Kamale Kamini, is also a very unique terracotta plaque. And last one is very rare in Bardhavan, the Monosha, figure number 10. Figure number 10. Chinnamasta, Tripura Sundari, Kali, Gandheshwari, Tara, Shitala, Chandi, etc. The artisans were very much conscious in their illustrations showing artistic skill. The Hindu Puranic goddesses and the folk goddesses, which were prevalent in the society, had been created by the artisans with devotion, projecting the subject towards the common mass to map an impression. In case of social life, I have selected 3, figure number 11. Among various subjects here, 3 specimens are included, namely a woman offering tree's branch to an animal, deer or goat. It reminds the early medieval sculpture Shalabhanjika. The depiction of figure is well proportionate and with full of body balance. She is cross-legged. In cross-legged posture, the position of hands as depicted by the artisan shows the force she applied to bending down the tree branch towards the animal, which is unique. Another plaque, figure number 12, bears a woman with a book. The depiction shows how the artisan was involved to depict the mood. It proves the intellectuality of the artisan to create the private space for the woman reader, precisely the concentration of the woman in her study. A woman, figure number 30, a woman, figure number 13. A woman arranging her hair with a comb in front of a mirror. It shows the treatment as made by the artisan, particularly the sitting posture, proportion of the body, and the private space surrounding the woman during her dressing. I have already told that I have included one subsection. This is the foreign elements, figure number 14. A number of foreign traders, Portuguese, British, Danish, came in Undivided Bengal from the early 17th century CE. During their stay in Bengal, a certain amount of mixing had been taking place with Diden society. Several terracotta plaques bear some evidences. In particular, in this case, I have taken one. It shows how a female was outraged by a foreigner. The artisan could not forget to include as an example the ravishment of a woman. A drama which was famous in the 19th century, Neeladarpana of Dinabandhu Mitra, bears some kind of incident. It has already been told that the artisans selected subject matter from their surroundings, particularly surroundings, perhaps depending upon the client's demand and taste, who were the patron of the said bricks-made temples in the Undivided Bengal, as well as in the surveyed geographical space. In the surveyed geographical space, that is, in the district of Purbo and Paschim Bardhaman, representation of women figures are very graceful, elegant, and full of life. Women were carved with proper dress code. Most of the figures were adorned with ornaments which reflects the contemporary taste. In case of deities, namely Jashoda, Radhika, Putana the demoness, Durga, Chinnamasta, Tripura Sundari, Kali, Chandi, Shitala, Gopinis, Borai the old woman, the artisans tried utmost to give full sense and life within a small space through their carvings with the description which we have in the contemporary vernacular literature. It does not mean that all artisans were well aware about the contemporary literature, but they constantly procured various information through the exposition of mythological stories of the epic Ramayana, the early life of Krishna, the young days of Krishna, the Chandi and Manasa Mangala's Kabbas, the life, the Shiva Parvati, particularly from the Shivayan, in the connection with the various religious and folk festivals in the Undivided Bengal, as well as in the surveyed geographical space within the stipulated period. By their creations, they had the motto to visualize the respective Hindu, Puranic, and folk gods and goddesses among the literate as well as illiterate people of the undivided Bengal. In case the non-religious depictions, figures have been presented not at all in the voluptuous mode, but in very gentle and tuned with all sorts of imperturbable elements. The artisan's deep consciousness about the contemporary society can be understood, namely the habit of study among the women and the participation of women in different types of cultural amusements as dancing, singing, and performing the game-like gymnastics. The interesting point is the so-called medieval and late medieval period. Most of the Bengali vernacular text had been evolved in the surveyed geographical space as well as in the so-called Rado region. Authors are namely Mukundaram of Daminna, Purva Bardhaman, Rupram Chakraborty of Kaiti, Srirampur, Purva Bardhaman, Ghanoram Chakraborty of Krishnapur, Purva Bardhaman, Narasingha Bosu of Shakari, Purva Bardhaman, and a large number of Vaishnava poets, namely Keshava Bharati, Narahari Sarkar, Brindaban Das, Lochana Das, Krishna Das Kaviraj, Jayananda, Gyano Das, and also Govinda Das. Apart from the aforesaid list, considering the so-called Rado's geographical space, the list becomes bigger, such as Chandidas, Birbhum, Dijo, Madhavadas, Saptagram, Hugli, and so many. The artisans who were directly involved to create the various types of terracotta plaques, incorporating the subjects according to their acquired knowledge from the contemporary society within the stipulated period through various local festivals. Within the geographical space of the surveyed districts, there are numerous burnt brick temples with the terracotta decoration have been recorded. But regarding the temple terracotta plaques, most of the art lovers, tourists, and general public are very much fond of the temple terracotta plaques of Bishnupur, now the district Bishnupur, the district Bankura. They are not well aware of the surveyed geographical space. A question may arise, is the quality of subject presentation of the temple terracotta plaques of the surveyed geographical space inferior than Bishnupur temple terracotta plaques? The quality of relief works and the subject presentation as made by the artisan do not prove the inferiority as well. There is no proof that the artisans of Bishnupur and the districts of Bardhaman are the same stock, but the artisans who were involved in making temple terracotta plaques within the geographical space had proved their sensibility in all aspects of the presentation with full of life and mobility for the creation of each terracotta plaques frame precisely in case of women. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your informative speech. Now we are ending our session here. We will meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. Okay. Have a nice day. On Terracotta Temple Artwork of Undivided Bengal. We have 5 distinguished speakers today. So without wasting time from the chair, we are starting our today's session. Today's first speaker, Dr. Mohammad Saurabhuddin, is Associate Professor and Chairman at the Department of Archaeology, Comilla University, Bangladesh. His research interests range from terracotta art of Bengal, field archaeology and museology. His book titled Biodiversity Depicted in Terracotta Plaques of Shompur Mahabihara in Bengali achieved Asiatic Society Halima Sharafuddin Award in 2014. I invite you, Dr. Mohammad Saurabhuddin, to deliver your talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Shilpi Roy. I started my presentation. First of all, I thanks everyone. And when I showing my presentation, I stopped my video because of the internet problem. So please pardon me. I share my slides. Good afternoon, everyone. About 2 months ago, when the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts first informed me about this symposium, I immediately regarded it as a fantastic chance to discover more about the temple decoration of the Undivided Bengal. Besides, my PhD was on animal representation in architectonic terracotta plaques of Bangladesh, 4th to 13th century AD. So I took this opportunity to share my work with you. I appreciate being invited to attend this special symposium by the Indira Gandhi Cultural Archive. Today, we are going to talk about the early medieval architectonic terracotta plaques from Bangladesh with lion images. First of all, I'm talking about the geocultural influence. Bangladesh is situated in the lower Ganges reaches and is connected with the upper Gangetic Valley by cultural bondage from the beginning of history. This being a bay delta, lacks stones and metal, this factor led Bangladeshi artisans to the influenced by the age-old rich terracotta art of upper Gangetic Valley, which rolled down from the Harappan people. Eventually, in due course of time, all of them associated together to form several schools marked with regional phenomenon. The architectonic terracotta art of Bangladesh was developed and flourished during 7th to 12th century AD in the northwestern part and the southwestern part of Bangladesh. The huge amount of terracotta artifacts found in Bangladesh proves that from the dawn of civilization, most common medium of art was clay. The most attractive evidence of this art are the plaques of terracotta, which are mainly used for the outer decoration of the Buddhist shrine during the 7th to 12th century AD. The terracotta depiction include a variety of flora and fauna, god and goddess, religious stories, male and female figures with varying posture and gesture and realistic scenes of everyday life. Then the research topics. The present study has focused on the lion presentation in early medieval terracotta plaques discovered in Bangladesh. These terracotta plaques that adorn the monument's wall are remaining as a sign of the relationship between life and environment, religious perspective, and the artistic perceptions of the clay artist back then. Human being and the cultural activities are closely related to ecology. From ancient time, animals and plants have been present in different artistic worlds. Following the Guptas, ancient Bengal was controlled by several autonomous kingdoms in various parts of the country. Pala dynasty in the North Bengal and the Deva dynasty in the Southeast Bengal were the most prominent rulers. They were Buddhist and creators of many monasteries decorated with the terracotta plaques. However, no architectonic terracotta plaques of early history period has been found for analysis. There are archaeological evidence in this regard only from the 7th century AD, and the most prolific of these earliest sites are in Bangladesh are Paharpur Shumpur Mahavihar, Jagaddal Bihar, Bharshu Bihar, Kanaidhap, Govindo Vita, Anand Bihar, Shalgon Bihar, Bhoj Bihar, Rukbanmura Bihar, Itakhulamura Bihar, and Ranir Banglo site. The research material this research is part of my PhD work. In this, I studied more than 3,000 terracotta plaques and found 91 lions presented in terracotta plaques. In the analytical study of this lion depiction, terracotta plaques, that depicted terracotta plaques can provide important information about the reason behind making these images. I just show you the in situ terracotta plaques of Bangladesh archaeological sites. At the first photograph, we show the 2 rows of terracotta plaques in situ in Paharpur Buddhist temple, and the right one is the Bharshu Bihar in situ terracotta plaques. This is the excavation time photos in black and white, and these 3 photographs from Shalgon Bihar Central Temple, Chaturmukha Cruciform Central Temple. The terracotta plaques at present in the storeroom. This is the excavation time photo. This is the basic study area of mine in Bangladesh. 3 regional contextual attachment over there. First of all, the Paharpur Buddha Vihara or Paharpur Shumpur Buddha Vihar. This is the first site. Most of the terracotta plaques found from there. The site is Mohstan region, and the third region is Lalmai Moinamoti region. Paharpur Shumpur Mahavihar site. Most of the terracotta plaques of this region have been collected from Paharpur Shumpur Mahavihar. In the post-excavation period, many plaques have been displaced from here to other places. Many plaques were sent to museums in India and West Pakistan before the liberation war of Bangladesh. Many were sent to within the country to Dhaka National Museum, Barandar Research Museum, and Dinajpur Museum. Some were smuggled to different countries by collectors of antique objects. Due to various limitations, plaques of India and Pakistan could not be included in the source of this research. Images of some plaques were traced in excavation report, but a present physical condition not found. In that case, photographs have been used as research object. Here I show the second region of terracotta plaques yielded site. This is the Mohstan region. At the present research, only those archaeological sites in Mohstangarh and its surroundings have been included where architectonic terracotta plaques have been found. Total plaque from Mohstangarh included in this research is 225, among which 57 have animal figure depicted in them. This is the Lalmai Moinamoti region. In this Lalmai Moinamoti region, in the light of archaeological epigraphical records, Lalmai Moinamoti area Kumilla was capital of Khoro, Rat, Dev, and Chandra dynasty. There are many temples and Buddhist vihars situated in this highland. From the archaeological survey, 56 archaeological sites are discovered in this area. Excavation has been carried out in 12 of these sites. From 6 of the sites, architectonic terracotta plaques were found. Some plaques of this area of museum, but their exact finding place could not be located. In such case, the terracotta plaques have been recorded as found from Moinamoti. In total, 487 terracotta plaques from this area have been included in this research, among which 286 are depictions of animal figure. This is the at a glance scenery of terracotta plaques, studied terracotta plaques, 3,166. Paharpur Bihar, 2,500 for 450. Mohstan region, 200. Lalmai Moinamoti region, 487. And the total summary, 3,166. And this is the lion depicted terracotta plaques quantity, 91. And the presentation of the subject, we divided into 7 criteria of these plaques. The first one is mythical depiction of lion, 20 plaques. Lion with double bodies, 20 plaques. Lion standing only on back legs, 16 plaques. Narrative depiction of lion, 15 plaques. Seated lion, moving lion, 7 plaques. Lion attacking and fighting, 6 plaques. In total, 91 plaques. With my PhD study, here is the pie chart of the animal depicted terracotta plaques. Total 3,166 mammals depictions, 615 mammals depiction out of 3,166, and lion is the most depicted terracotta plaques, 91. The lion is one of the wild cat with large physiques and majestic attitude. Historically, lion would have been found throughout much of Africa and even in parts of Europe and Asia as well. From ancient time, lion is thought to be a symbol of heroism and even being considered as the king of the beasts, especially for its strength and power. A lion face is one of the most widely recognized animal symbol in human culture. According to Hindu textual tradition, it is the mount of Durga. Similarly, Vishnu has an incarnation called Narasingha Avatar. On the other hand, the Buddhist god Manjushri is often seen to be seated on a lion. It is also related with the image of Siddhartha Gautama. In Jainism, associated with a particular Tirthankar. It has been extensively depicted in sculpture, painting, and other artwork. In early medieval architectonic terracotta plaques is one of the major art objects which represent the lion images in various forms. The presentation of lion images is seated or standing, moving, attacking, or fighting. And some plaques are depicting the narrative history of Panchatantra of Uttar Pradesh. It is interestingly seen that These architectonic terracotta plaques almost present the natural behaviors of lion and establish lion-related stories of that time. The first criteria is mythical of lion. 20 terracotta plaques are found with a mythical depiction of lion. These plaques of lion images were discovered at Paharpur, Ananda Bihar, and Rupbanmura Bihar. In our current study, 4 plaques have been found containing Sinhamukha Kirtimukh on them. An excellent plaque found in Shalban Bihar has a perfect image of Sinhamukha Kirtimukha on it. It has 2 large curved horns on its buzzing eyes, a human-like nose. The upper and lower jaws of his face are visible, and the little oval tongue is hanging out from his wide open mouth. Pair of lion paws is carved on either side of this lion face. This is the middle one, and these 3 plaques is the Sinhamukha Kirtimukha terracotta plaques. And the next one, in 10 of these terracotta plaques, the front legs of lion depicted crosswise, apparently making it looks like it is resting on its front legs. The remaining 6 terracotta plaques shows the central view of seated lion with gorgeous mane. This terracotta plaques presents the human-like gesture. Perhaps this is the mythical or imaginary thinking of the artisans. The second criteria is lions with double bodies. 20 plaques we found like that, that images where lions are depicted with 1 face and 2 bodies. 11 of these terracotta plaques have been found with double bodies of lion in good condition. In this TC plaques, the mane of the lion resembles branch of curly hair on both sides of the head and from the middle. Here, the face of the lion is depicted with detailed carvings showing a tranquil expression on the gorgeous mane and the round-shaped eyes. There are partial lions on the sides from the middle, and the central lion seems to be a combined image having some micro distinctions. Additionally, 2 sides of the plaque seems like mirror image. Usually, these types of terracotta plaques were made to decorate the corner of wall or pillars. This kind of representation is the creative imagination of the artisans. These plaques were discovered from Paharpur Bihar, Shalban Bihar, Bhashu Bihar, and Anand Bihar. The next criteria is lions standing only on back legs. 16 terracotta plaques were found with depiction of lion standing only on its back legs, left or lateral view. In 3 terracotta plaques, the curved lion seems to be climbing onto something, putting out its tongue with an aggressive body language and mane bouncing on its back. This type of artistic presentation is seen in the South Indian architectural art like Shardola and Baloya. Another 4 images are similar to the standing image of lions. The depiction of the body of lion standing on its rear feet resembles a human figure standing in upright position. Next one is narrative depiction of lion. 15 terracotta plaques have been found in Mahastangor, Moynamuti, and Paharpur, where the lion is representing different stories. 3 terracotta plaques show lion and lioness looking at their own face over a well. This terracotta plaques depiction resembles with the story of hare teaching a crazy lion of Panchatantra, though no hare is presented here. According to the Panchatantra story that talks about the lion Madan Matta, who was decoyed by a hare into a well, where the lion used its own reflection for another beast and tried to fight with it and perished by drowning. These TC plaques are depicted with rowing image of lion. The whale depicted in plaques are similar to ring whale. Only 1 terracotta plaque from Bhashu Bihar represents the lion and a hare together. In this plaques, the lion is disappointingly listening to the hare's reason to delay in coming to it as its food. Another popular tale of disturbing a sleeping lion's ear with a stick by monkey is also presented in 3 terracotta plaques. And in another TC plaques, the lion is playing with 2 boars in the forest where the lion is turning its neck, the right side upper one. And another terracotta plaques, probably the lion is depicted as God. A man is shown in praying posture or showing respect in front of the lion. In another plaque, the lion is depicted in dancing mood with a human apparently playing with the man. The neck and waist of the man is ornamented with beads chain. All of these 3 terracotta plaques were found in the same temple wall in Shalban Vihara. This is another story of Denati plaques. In 6 other terracotta plaques, lions are portrayed in laying at the entrance of its den. This depiction apparently refers to another story, the talking cave, found only in certain version of the Panchatantra of Kashmir, the Jain versions, and the Brihat Katha. According to the story, a cunning fox started an imaginary conversation with the cave to make sure whether there is a lion inside or not. This imaginary conversation with the cave led the lion to respond in roars. The artist used arch technique to depict the dance. The number 5 criteria is seated lion. Side view of seated 70 plaques have been depicted with the lion seated on the ground in various postures. 5 of these terracotta plaques are broken and reveal the seated lion with its tail. The mane or hair of lion have been depicted by incised or pointed marks on the plaques. This is the only intake plaques. So I just put it the slide. This is the 4th criteria, 6th criteria, moving lions. 7 terracotta plaques are found with the depiction of the lion in moving posture. In one Shalban Bihar terracotta plaques, lion is depicted with extraordinarily decorative mane, which resembles ornamental flower carvings, walking with a ferocious expression on its face. This is the left side lower one. Here the lion's pattern line spread around face, eye and eyeball are made in low relief. In one terracotta plaques, the body depicted as like a lion, but face resembles a screaming donkey with treble teeth. Here the plaque is depicted with metamorphic imagination. The last criteria is lion attacking or fighting. 6 terracotta plaques have been identified with lion in fighting posture. In 2 plaques, lion and boar are fighting against each other. The lion is standing on 2 rear legs and attacking the boar, and the boar is trying to defend itself by using its front. One Shalban Bihar plaques, lion is attacking a domestic elephant. The elephant unfolds a belt or saddle around its belly. That's why it is identified as domestic elephant. The lion crushed the head of the elephant and the elephant is almost laying down. Here the lion is depicted with ferocious appearance. In another terracotta plaques from Paharpur, lion stands depicted fighting with the armed soldier. Here the lion stands by its back legs and attacking with its front legs. The soldier is defending himself from the assault of the lion by using a shield and counter-attacking by his sword. So this is the description of my plaques. I have some understanding and importance of this type of research. So a nation express its development in arts and crafts, religious background and lifestyle mainly through architecture, sculpture and painting. The present research has studied terracotta plaques and sculptures from a number of archaeological sites in Bangladesh. The diverse terracotta plaques are matchless examples of artistry. The ornamentation of terracotta plaques is made by the mainly hand modeling and engravings. Though the artworks of Pal and Dev age are not as strong as that of Gupta age, however, they are unique with vast uses of subjects. There are 91 terracotta plaques depicting lions. At present, there is no wild lion in Bangladesh, and there is no evidence about their existence in Bangladesh, either archaeologically or textually. It is only Raj Tarangini of Kalhon which mentioned a story in regret to the killing of a lion by Jayapida, a prince of Kashmir, at Pundravardhan Nagar, Mahastangar of Bogura. But it is here to believe that Pundravardhan once processed wild lions, especially when one will take the ecological factors in account. Whatever may be the case, it is still not found in any corner and even in surrounding area Bangladesh. This circumstance would lead to believe that artificers of terracotta plaques were motivated by the traditional belief that lion is a symbol of might and revolt. Terracotta plaques have lion presentation from all around the Bangladesh, assume that it was a popular symbol in crafts. In India, Ashokan pillars also bear lion figures as the symbol of royalty. The artists of Pal and they must have been keen in observation and fully responsive to their environment and produce a folk artistic that was related to their environment. The terracotta plaques are extraordinarily unique in their thematic diversity. Numerous themes of contemporary society have surfaced here. The art is ever changing. It is becoming inhabitable day by day due to the excessive biological need of human beings. Lack of balance in nature is a major question nowadays. In such situation, the environment of a populous country like Bangladesh is under threat. The limited forest area which are surviving even after facing natural calamities are the only shelter of wildlife. But for cultivation and habitation of human, forest area decreases from ages and the process is still. As a result, many species of wild animals have faced extinction. If investigation is made regarding the extinct animal since the ancient age, the dire situation could be understood. The terracotta plaques of ancient Bengal can be important examples of such situation. It is expected that if these presentations of terracotta plaques can be presented to the young generation, it will raise their awareness regarding the matter. If public awareness can be built through art, forests and endangered animals will survive. The plaques on the outer walls of temples and monasteries have increased the splendor of the architectures and also served as the source of knowledge to the pilgrims. Hence, monastery-related temple architecture could be called a gorgeous exhibition of contemporary clay modeling. Last of all, I thanks Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, Ministry of Cultural Affairs, Government of India, and my PhD supervisor, Professor Sufi Mustafizur Rahman, and co-supervisor Musharraf Hussain, and also the Department of Art, Ministry of Cultural Affairs, Higher Education Quality Enhanced Program, UGC, Jahangirnagar University, and Kumilla University. Thanks to all to hearing me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Saurabhuddin, for your informative lecture. Next speaker, Dr. Shubho Majumdar, is Superintending Archaeologist of Archaeological Survey of India, Kolkata Circle. He is the recipient of Jaino Puratattva Prerna Award 2015, Sangskriti Sangrakshak Award 2018, and Puratattva Sangskriti Sangvardhak title 2020 for the contribution in the field of Jain archaeology from the Bharatbarshiya Digambar Jain Mahabhasha. I invite you, Dr. Shubho Majumdar, to deliver your talk, and also request other speakers, please mute yourself while delivering the lecture.
Good afternoon, all. It is really a pleasure for me to deliver a lecture in such a wonderful organization like Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, to organizing such two-day international seminar on terracotta temple artwork of Undivided Bengal. And especially thank to Dr. Shilpi Roy for inviting me to deliver a lecture on the topic. And also through the presentation, I will try to highlight it, the activity done by the Archaeological Survey of India, Kolkata Circle especially, for preserving and protecting the terracotta temple of Bengal. especially the present day West Bengal. Terracotta as an of art was witnessed by the Bengal from a very early stage of human occupation in the region. However, the terracotta artwork started figuring on the brick temple of Undivided Bengal from the post-Gupta period. Only a few of the best specimens of temple terracotta art of the early medieval phase, however, has survived in the rebirth of time. It is only the 15th century that the temple terracotta in Bengal assumed a distinct regional style. From the very early stage, we have the evidence, the archaeological evidence from Bengal. We found the different terracotta plaques from like Chandraketu in yesterday lecture. Also, the Professor Sudhibare Bandyopadhyay madam and Mahua madam also shows some terracotta figurines from the Chandraketu and other important site of Bengal. And recently, I excavated a site known as the Damdam Clive House. And during the excavation, I also found some terracotta plaque from the Shungo to Gupta period, and also some crude terracotta figurines belonging first century BC. But in the temple architecture, we have some early evidence of temple like the temple of Bohulara, Siddheshwar temple, Bohulara, ancient temple Bohulara in Bankura, and temple of Saddeul, Ishai Ghosher Deul, and also the brick temple of Jotat Deul. These are some standing, standing or terracotta temple protected by the archaeological Survey of India, Kolkata Circle. And I have tried to show that this picture clearly indicate that in the left side photographs taken before the protection, like in first half of 90th century, and the right hand side photograph is the present day photograph after recent conservation work. So it clearly shows that how Archaeological Survey of India, especially doing their own their detailed conservation work to protecting the temple of different parts of India, including the Bengal, especially the brick temple, because the preservation of the stone temple or stone architecture is comparatively easy rather than the brick conservation, because the structure, you can see that the huge structure of the shikor structure is in the middle portion. The bandhana area of the temple is almost damaged due to its vegetation growth and other erosion activity. And after the protecting the temple, the Archaeological Survey of India periodically this and it retrieved its old glory. And this is another photograph. It is also taken in time of the 1920 around. This is the temple of Jain temple at Jain brick temple of Saddeul in Bardhaman, and this is the present day photograph of the Jain temple of Saddeul. And this is another view of the Jotat Deul in South 24 Pargona. This is the view, and this is the present view. So, and this is another surviving temple of early medieval period known as the Ishai Ghosher Deul in Bardhaman. This is also protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. So in my presentation, I have tried to highlight it about the two aspects, that the early temple and the temple other temple architecture of Bengal, with small brief about the different subject depicted during the time of 15th to 19th century in the different temple, especially protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. And after that, I will try to show how the Archaeological Survey of India conserve and preserve this temple with their scientific way, and to preserve this for the next future generation. This is some photographs taken from the Shamrai, Jodbanglo and Madanmon temple. It shows the different aspect of the depiction. Yesterday also we heard the a wonderful lecture on the Shamrai temple, detailed description of the sculpture Rashomandal, and I have not highlighted the more about the detail each and every plaque, but I try to highlight it about the different aspects like the Krishna Lila, Norari Kunjo, and other hunting activity, dancing activity, all type. Yesterday, Muhammad also shows the Gaudiya dance form. So it in the temple architecture in the second in the medieval and late medieval period Bengal, it contained the different variety of depiction in the terracotta temple art. This is the Radha Vinod temple from the Bakura, from Vishnupur. It also shows the depiction of the Dasavatar panel or a depiction of the Shaib Acharya. Though it is a temple on Vishnu, but they depicted the Shaib Acharya and the Shaiva Lingo also. And in Shamrai temple, in the inside of the Shamrai temple, Garbhagriha, probably a Jain Tirthankar in also depicted near to the upstairs case of the Shamrai temple. So it clearly shows that in that time, though the Vaishnavism or the Mollo king was very much associated with the Vaishnava ideology, but during the depiction of the terracotta plaque for the decoration of the temple architecture, they used the different religious icon to decorate their temple architecture. This is the famous Rash from Shamrai temple, the Ramayana panel and the Krishna Kaliyadaman scene and the hunting scene, different scene from the. This is another facet of from the Joydev temple Kenduli, and this is the another depiction of the temple. The depiction try to highlight about the depiction of the Dasavatar panel. And this is a close view, and another important temple is located in the Guptipada in Kalna. So near to the Kalna Guptipada temple, the scene of the Ravan and Ram, the Mahishasura, and in the lower part I try to show the special emphasis on the depiction of a boat scene in the temple. So it is another important aspect. There are several research on the different aspect of the depiction of the temple architecture. So there are various type of the boat also depicted, and the uniform and the dress also variety from the temple to temple. So there are some variety, some experience, and the so-called the craftsmen. They also are very much intellectual, and they know about the present the social condition. They also depicted not only the religious, they also depicted the social activity and the other contemporary activity through that temple. So this is one of the important aspect for the temple terracotta art of the Bengal during the late medieval period. So this need to be this terracotta plaque is already studied in the most of the temple, but I think the study need the more details from the temple to temple, because during I have joined the Kolkata Circle in 2019, and after that I explored the temple very closely, and I found that there are some gradual development. Not only the terracotta art, the placement of the particular plaque is also very important, which need to be studied more specially, because in the temple to temple, the depicted particular form, particular feature is not the same area, or they say they depicted in the different area. So this need to be study more as per my understanding. And this is the second part of my research, my lecture, that the different environmental or different problem we face during the time of preservation and conservation of those terracotta temple. Yesterday also I heard that the Sudhiba ma'am also said that the Archaeological Survey of India or State Archaeology, they protected and they maintain the conservation of the temple and of the brick temple as well as the other temple, but the local public, they know the proper technique, but they conserve the temple. So this is a very serious issue. I have also seen this type of the activity, and there are several also known person. They also support them to conserve to conserve or preserve those temples through the modern way. And the most of the people, amateur archaeologists, also try to conserve the temple with their own views. So this is proper way to preserve the temple. As a result, we gradually lost the temple terracotta plaque from the Bengal. You can see the not only the local unprotected monument, the state government monument, also the terracotta plaque gradually decay. So we need to emphasize the proper conservation plan. And I have tried to highlight that that there at present day the population, and due to the increase of the environmental effect, the terracotta plaque gradually very gradually decayed. And I also feel in our some monument the terracotta we found that the flaking due to the reason. And we have already studied the two zone like the Kalna and the Bishnupur zone for understanding the environmental effect on the temple architecture. And I have tried to highlighted those effects through my presentation, because the focus study on the environmental impact assessment is very much essential to not only to study the terracotta plaque for the protected those temple for the future generation. Like the Kalna, we all know that the Kalna is another important temple town, and some good number of the 12 temple protected by the Archaeological Survey of India. And among this temple, like the Krishnachandraji, the Lalji temple, and the Pratapeshwar Shiva temple has contained a good number of the terracotta plaque. And in the Kalna, we have also found the several style of temple architecture, like the flat roof, like the Shikaro, like Pancharatno, or 25 Ratno at Krishnachandraji as well as the Lalji. And one of the important that we have the 108 Shiva temple at Kalna. So the Kalna is another one of the important temple town. And other hand, the Bishnupur, which is established by the Mollo dynasty, and we found a good number of the temple in the Bishnupur, and most of the temple protected by the Archaeological Survey of India, and there are some unprotected temple also. And among the Bishnupur group of temple, the most of the temple is constructed on the laterite stone, and the some important temple like the Rashmancho, Jod Banglo, Shamrai, Radha Binod, and Madan Mohan temple construct a plaque. And this terracotta plaque are gradually decay through the time, but we emphasize more and more to preserve this terracotta plaque through the scientific way. This is the drone view of the Kalna group of temple. This is the in the left side you can see the 100 Shiva temple, the unique format, unique shape of this temple architecture. And in the left hand side, sorry, in the right hand side, the Krishnachandraji, the Lalji, Krishnachandraji, and Pratapeshwar. And this is a wonderful group of temple. And I have tried to show that through this picture that how the modern civilization actually they cover the temple. Actually, you can see that the very close to the 100 Shiva temple and very close to the other group of temple, there are some construction activity. As a result, the underwater the water activity and the underground water also create a very much problem for Kalna group of temple. You can see that just near to the Krishnachandraji there is a huge pond, and we have approached to the state government for cleaning the pond from time to time. But there are some issues. As a result, the pond is not cleared properly because it is not under our jurisdiction, but it is close to the Krishnachandraji. And as a result, the underwater activity very much affected the Lalji temple. And this is the general view of the Lalji temple. This is another view of the Pratapeshwar Shiva temple. There are some unique important temple terracotta plaque from the Pratapeshwar Shiva temple Kalna. And this is the general view of the Rashmancho and the Madan Mohan, the Bishnupur. And you can see also in the Bishnupur also the population, the modern construction, they gradually covered the surrounding area of those temple, and it very much affect the environmental micro environmental effect of the temple properly. We have our Ancient Archaeological Monument Act, and as through this act we issue the different notice for and stop the modern construction, but ultimately as per the rule it need to be monitored on by the local authority also, and due to this we have very much problem to control this unauthorized activity in and around a surrounding area of those temples. But these two we need the proper maintain or keep, because this construction going on the outside the boundary of the temple. And the Bishnupur already proposed as a nomination, already nominated as a tentative list of the World Heritage. But through this activity, we facing very much problem to stay or to further process about the World Heritage of this Bishnupur group of temples. This is the drone view of the Shamrai temple, and as well as the Jod Banglo temple. Some terracotta plaques from the Shamrai, and some earlier photographs of those temple, because I tried to show that when the temple was protected in around the 1914, and the present day photograph, the Madan Mohan temple and the present day photograph, and you can see that this is the one of the important temple of the Radha Vinod temple. The most of the only the research scholar they visited the site, but not the visitor they explored the site. We try to emphasize the visitor, and we install the different signages in and around the temple in the different way to invite the public to visit those temples. And you can see that the temple, the one of the side of the temple is almost collapsed. But after protecting this temple, Archaeological Survey of India, with their scientific way, with the proper maintain, and we have restored this area. And this is the present day photographs of the Radha Vinod temple. This is the famous Rashamancha from Bishnupur. You can see the hole in the center of the temple, and the chala and the dochala is almost collapsed in the every part. But after that we restored this, and this is the famous Shamrai temple. And this is the recent view of the Shamrai temple. So you can see that how Archaeological Survey of India maintain and protect the national importance monument properly. And there are some biological effect which I try to discuss in the presentation also, because in the those terracotta plaque is damaged, like the algae, fungi, moss and lichen are present in the environment of the Bishnupur and Kalna. As noted in the survey, that the degeneration pattern of the study, one can find that the green algae proliferate in the monument's surface more and is found mainly in the rainy season and post monsoon. And this algae and chloroform dominated the microbial scenario. There are also sub algae, and they colonize the monument's surface. So it very much this algae very much affect the temple terracotta plaque of the temple. However, one can see the surface of terracotta plaque Bishnupur Kalna, the lichen like show the preference to grow with the green algae rather than the blue-green ones. So I have tried to this is the more scientific way. I try to discuss this through the photograph. This is the this photograph shows the roof of the temple, and how the moss is created the very much problem in the roof area, where the water are retained or water due to the monsoon and post monsoon. These algae fungi are grow very much, and we notice this after the collecting the sample. We also analyze those sample, and accordingly we plan to conserve our chemical scientific research, and scientifically we remove those algae fungi. I will show the present day photographs of those temples. This is the some other photographs show that I have already told that the green algae the presence of the green algae. You can see the dotted in the terracotta plaque, and this is the Lalji temple from the Vishnu from Kalna, and up to this level you can see that the green algae presence in the temple surface. And this is the photographs from the Shamrai temple, and the presence of the green algae and fungi, and it show that how the terracotta plaque gradually the damage. But we monitor this thing, and we accordingly after 5 years or 10 years we periodically cleaning those temple for it further preservation. So there are some another effect like the biomass, which is also affected the temple, where the biomass also it creates the very much problem. This is the some other photographs show the how the biomass also affect those terracotta temple, the climatic condition and the fluctuation. And the climatic condition in those areas, because we have the in those areas the high heat, or in the heavy rain, it also create very much effect on the terracotta plaque. So this thing need to be monitored, and we need to be create the micro environment in and around the temple, as I already already talked about the micro environment. But due to the modern activity and due to the regular modern activity by the different factors, as well as the different modern activity in and around the temple complex, so we face very much problem. This is the Rameshwar temple at Kalna. You can see the fluctuation of the weather, how the terracotta plaque, the upper layer of the terracotta plaque gradually eroded. There is another photograph from the Krishna Chandraji temple. The Eolene effect also created the problem in the terracotta plaque. It basically found this type of the effect. It very much created the problem in the temple of Vishnupur, not in the temple of Kalna, because in the we all know that the Vishnupur is close to the Chotanagpur plateau area, and due to the this type of the Eolene effect and the wind effect, we also facing the problem of the problem in the temple terracotta plaque of the Vishnupur. The water also create the groundwater. I have already told about the problem of groundwater. So groundwater problem we also face especially face in the problem in the Kalna, not in the Vishnupur, because in the Kalna the river Ganga is very close to the temple complex. So this is the another important aspect of regarding the deterioration of the terracotta plaque. The solar radiation is another effect. We also found the damage of the solar effect especially in the temple of the Vishnupur due to the high heat in the Vishnupur area. And this is I have shown some photographs of the Jod Bangla temple before its chemical treatment plaque, and after the chemical treatment. This is the present day photograph, and this is the present day photograph of the terracotta plaque of the same area. So this type of the activity we taken for preserving our national heritage. This is the Shamrai temple before conservation photograph you can see, and the after chemical treatment. And this is the photograph I have tried to show. Another photograph not in Kalna or Vishnupur area. This is the photograph from the Palpara, Nodia. This is another important temple, and this photograph I have tried to show that how the terracotta plaque not only damage the bricks in and around the terracotta plaque, the brick also damaged due to the saline effect and the erosion. But we take care, and recently we conserve this temple properly. And this is the some other photographs of the in the Hooghly district and the Krishna Guptipara temple, Krishna Chandra temple from the Guptipara, and this is the Ramachandra temple from the Guptipara before and after photograph of the chemical treatment. This is the Chaitanya Devo temple of the Guptipara before and after. This is the Jod Bangla type temple after chemical treatment photograph. And after this the photo activity of the archaeological survey, I try to highlight the brief about the unprotected temple. So this is the some photograph of the unprotected temple in the Vishnupur, the Mahaprabhu temple, which is probably the one of the Jodbanga temple. But due to the as this is the unprotected, and the authority, the who have the owner of that temple not allow us to maintain or yeah, but Archaeological Survey of India always try to protect it or try to conserve the temple of the for the national importance. And as well as in recently we have also do our work through the unprotected monument also. But if the local authority or the local public, they can approach, then if we understand that this temple need to be proper maintained, then we can help them to for safeguard those temple temple for the future generation. This is some other photographs of the Jugal Kishore temple or Balaram temple of the Vishnupur. There is a Vishnupur Royal Palace, the present condition of the photograph. So this is not protected by the ASI, and so this can see the and not the state government, and how the present day scenario of this unprotected monument. This is also our heritage, and we lost our heritage very rapidly if we not maintain, or the local public or the local authority are not aware to protect their own heritage. Then we lost the heritage, and we not recorded this heritage for future generation. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Shubho, for your illustrative lecture. You please rejoin us at 4:40 at panel discussion, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Dr. Srila Basu, is Associate Professor of Department of Bengali in Vishwabharati University, Shantiniketan. Her specialization is on Tagore literature, medieval art, Bengal art, and Bengal temple architecture. She awarded with Nehru Trust UK visiting fellowship for studying Indian collection in Victoria and Albert Museum, London. Over to you, ma'am.
Shilpa, can you hear me right now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Shilpa. I am grateful to the IGNCA for allowing me to say something about terracotta temples of Bengal. The title of my paper is From Rajas to Commoners, the Changing Role of Patronage in Bengal Terracotta Temples. I will start my discussion with the temple of Raghunath in Birbhum district. The Raghunath temple of Khurisha, the earliest of Birbhum, is quite important. The pre-Vishnupur terracotta temples of Bengal. The Bengal temples do not possess much ornamentation of narratives before Vishnupur, starting from the earliest temple of Barakar, Palshen temple of Bahulara, Chonatapal, Shadbeulia, and others. The Singhabahini temple of Ghatal, the twin temples of Vaidyapur, the Gopal temple of Ahmadpur or Nrsimha temple of Gokarna are some of the important temples of 15th and 16th century Bengal. But the temple building divided Bengal took a new shape in the reign of Malla Rajas of Vishnupur, starting from 17th century, which continued till the middle of 18th century. Many motifs from the narratives of Krishna, Rama, and Devi Purana were depicted in the said Archala Raghunath temple of Khurisha, a pattern which was common in Vishnupur and also in later temples. Raghunath temple was built 10 years before the first plentifully ornamented temple of Vishnupur, Shamrai, was built. It was built by a commoner, Raghunath Bhattacharya, Brahmin by caste. The temples of 15th and 16th century were small by size and less ornamented. The Raghunath temple was a small one but significant for the originality of ornamentation. The Maharajas of Vishnupur changed the total scenario of total temple building. The reign of Mallaraja Birhambir was the turning point. The theory of Gaudiya Vaishnavism was an outcome of the Chaitanya Bhakti movement of Bengal. Their theoretical texts were written and cultured mainly in Vrindavan. Srinivas Acharya the famous Vaishnav guru. Can you see my slides, Shilpa? Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
It's working.
but is it in a full screen format or?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Just 1 minute.
Please do the full screen.
Right now?
Not yet, ma'am.
Just wait. Here it is showing in the full screen format. Just 1 minute. Right now, Shilpa?
No, ma'am. Not yet.
Go to slideshow and from the beginning. From the beginning. Try
No.
like this. Go to slideshow. Then come to the from the slideshow. At the right, just right. This slideshow is there on the above, right, immediate right. After animation is there, slideshow. Above, just above. You take your cursor above. Slideshow just ওখানেই আছে দেখো ওই জায়গাটাতেই আছে স্লাইডশোতে গিয়ে ইয়েতে দেখো from beginning.
No, I am in the slideshow mode, but is it?
না আসছে না ওখানে স্লাইডশোতে যাওয়ার পরে from the beginning করে দাও তাহলে এটা মনে হয় এসে যাবে তার নিচের লাইনই আছে from the beginning or the current slide যে কোনো একটা চেঞ্জ হচ্ছে না okay otherwise you
Shall I
can
start from our part?
You can start.
Okay.
Why it's not?
Okay, ma'am. So, Abhishek, can you hear me?
जी मैम
आप डॉक्टर श्रीला बासु का जो प्रेजेंटेशन है ना
जी
वो प्ले कर दो
अभी क्या आ रहा है पूरा?
नहीं मैम नो प्रॉब्लम वी हैव योर प्रेजेंटेशन
Okay, please. Sorry for the inconvenience.
No ma'am.
I don't know why it's not coming.
Sometimes it happens, ma'am.
Okay, I'm reading the paper. Meanwhile, please start the slideshow. The theoretical text. No, just go to the first one. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Now it's working.
The theoretical texts were written and cultured mainly in Vrindavan. Srinivasacharya, the famous Vaishnava guru, carried the tradition of Gaudiya Vaishnavism to Vishnupur. The Malla Rajas of Vishnupur were influenced by Srinivasacharya. The next slide, please. Yes, here is a book cover, wooden book cover, which is from Ashutosh Museum, Kolkata. Here we can see in the red background Srinivasacharya and Bir Hambir. They are the meeting of them, and the queens they are just following the Srinivasacharya's pathway. The Terracotta temple building tradition of Undivided Bengal reaches its zenith in 17th century Vishnupur. The temples of Vishnupur were built for the pleasure, quote unquote, pleasure of Radha Krishna, as the inscription suggested. The numerous terracotta and laterite stone temples were built by the kings and the queens of Vishnupur from the early 17th century to the middle of 18th century. These were Vaishnava temples, though the Rajas worshipped Shakta goddess Mrinmoyi as their Kula Devi. The narratives of Krishna and Rama are the predominant themes in the temple wall. The details of Bhagavad Purana Vaishnava lyric poetry, and Ramakatha were meticulously depicted. Shikhara and Chala were the earlier styles of Bengal architecture. Mallarajas introduced the variation of Ratna style of architecture. Raja Raghunath Singha was an enthusiastic temple builder. Two five-pinnacled or Pancharatna temples were built under his patronage in 1643 in two different mediums. These are the famous terracotta temples of Shamrai and the laterite temple of Gokul Nagar near Bishnupur. The third slide, please. Yes, here is the Shamrai temple. And yesterday, Dr. Pika Ghosh discussed about this temple mainly. And the next slide, please. It is showing the Rasha Mandala, and it is the typical Vaishnava motif. And in Shamrai, in only the Shamrai temple, there are 40 Rasha Mandala in the whole temple. So we can see the importance of Rasha Mandala, typical stylized Vaishnava motif in this temple. Single pinnacle temple or Akratna temple was also introduced under the patronage of Raghunath Singha, the first specimen being the Kalachand temple. Consequently, several other temples of the same style were built during the reign of Durjana Singha, Veera Singha, and Chaitanya Singha. Shamrai, Krishna Rai, which is commonly known as Jod Bangla temple, Madan Mohan, which is an important Ekaratna temple, were famous for their terracotta ornamentation. Even the queens of Vishnupur, like Chudamani Singha or Shiramani Singha, took initiatives in temple building. Education among the women was an agenda in course of Chaitanya movement in Bengal. There are quite a few female Vaishnava gurus, conspicuous among them Janhava Devi, Sita Devi, and Hemlata Thakurani. Hemlata Thakurani was the daughter of Srinivas Acharya, who spent part of his latter life in Vishnupur. Her influence has been a major factor in the event of Queen's voices being audible. Hemlata Thakurani herself built a temple in Goswami Para, Vishnupur. Vishnupur Raj dominated the temple building of 17th century Bengal. Some minor zamindars, such as Bashberia, took initiative in separate pockets. The Ananta Vasudev temple of Bashberia shows the obvious influence of Vishnupur in architectural style and depiction of narratives. In 18th century, the patronage of royal families of Bardhaman, Dinajpur, now in Bangladesh, Nator, Puthia, which is also in Bangladesh, and other become significant. The Rajas of Bardhaman, Dinajpur, and Puthia, and many other minor rulers follow the temple building tradition of Vishnupur. Rajas of Bardhaman built their Ganga Bash, a subsidiary religious center adjacent to the Ganges in Kalna. They upgraded the Ratna style of temples, increasing the number of pinnacles to 25, the maximum that we find in Bengal temples. Please show the next slide. It is the large temple, and this is an important, the first, no, not this one, the first one. The This is the first 25 pinnacle, Pochish Ratno temple. A small number of 13 and 17 and 21 pinnacles were built, but they were neither very big nor very important. The Lalji in 1739 and Krishna Chandra in 1751-52 temples are significant in the context of style and ornamentation. Another 25 temple of Kalna, Gopalji, and temple of Shukharia and Sonamukhi are also important. The next slide, please. This is an terracotta plaque from Krishna Chandra temple where Krishna is killing Bakasur, the typical motif of Krishna's Valya Lila. And the next one showing Krishna, the next slide please, yes. It is also from Krishna Chandra temple. And the next slide please. Yes, this one is from Shukharia. It is the 25 pinnacle temple which was built in 1813. Bardhaman Raj built temples not for their own jurisdiction, but also in Puri, Odisha. The Charchala or four thatched roof temple was built beside Markandeya Sarovar near the Jagannath temple of Puri. Puri was very common among the pilgrims in pre-colonial Bengal. Chaitanya spent his latter life in Puri. The Rajas of Bardhaman also built some temples in Chandrakona at West Mednipur after conquering the region with a battle with Shobha Singh, the ruler of Mednipur. Rani Bhavani of Nator Raj Estate was a prominent name in the pre-colonial temple building tradition. She was a devoted and had a serious contribution in the renovation of Varanasi, the in the famous Hindu pilgrimage in 18th century. Baranagar in Murshidabad was her Gangabash. The Char Bangla temple complex, which was built in 1760 of Baranagar, and Gangeshwar temple were important edifices under her patronage. She followed the tradition of the queens of Vishnupur in the 18th century, the temple building tradition, obviously. The Rani Bhavani's legacy was carried forward by Sharad Sundari, Bhuvan Mohini, and Hemanta Kumari, the three widows of Puthia Rajasthan. The next slide, please. This one is from Char Bangla temple, which was built by Rani Bhavani, and here we can see the battle scene of Rama and Ravana. And Ravana is ultimately paying his homage to Rama. And in Kritibash's Ramayana, he is saying that Tomar Nindak Ami Moha Papamoti. Ravana is surrendering towards Rama. So now and the next slide. Rani Bhavani was a pious lady. She was a Shaiva. She was Shaiva, and this is the image of Shaiva. So now we can see that some motifs, some prominent motifs are coming, which is not only Vaishnava motifs. Temples with different architectural styles were built under the royal patronage of Puthia Raj also. The Dinajpur Raj estate was Vaishnava faith. They built the famous temple of Kantoji in Kantanagar near Dinajpur. The next slide, please. This was built in 1704 to 1722. However, this was a 9 pinnacle temples. However, the pinnacles were destroyed in the earthquake of 1897. This temple is massive and has immensely rich and copious ornamentation, predominantly narratives of Krishna, Rama, and of social scenes. In the four facets of the temple, it is comparable only with the excellent artistry of Vishnupur. The next one, please. Here is the social scenes. The next slide, please. Is the social scenes is in the lower fridge, and above that, some scenes from Ramayana is there. There was a change in the nature of patronage of temple building in the 18th century Bengal. Many minor zamindars built temple complexes. Some of them were connected with different Raj estates. Businessmen started temple building in this century. The economic scenery of rural Bengal began to change with the introduction of permanent settlement in the end of 18th century. The changes in the land settlement that had been started by Murshid Quli Khan reached its final culmination in the form of Cornwallis permanent settlement. This not only brought change in the character of the zamindari class, the economic condition of the peasants or village community, but also in the society. It affected even the caste system. The British rule in Bengal presented a great opportunity to the native entrepreneurs who amassed enormous money through trade relation with the East India Company. Contact with the European colonial forces had a far-fetching effect on every aspect of Bengali life. The Banik community became an important force in the society. The participation of this community in temple building was an attempt to gain social respectability. This theory of upward mobility is discussed by Hitesh Rajan Sanyal. The wealthy patron of temple complex of Artpur was connected to the Bardhaman Raj estate. The next slide, please. This one is from Puthia, the Charana estate of Puthia, and the next one, it is also from Puthia, the Govinda Mandir of Puthia, where we can see a typical Vaishnava motif, the Nabanari Kunjar, and the narrative of Nabanari Kunjar was originated as a Singhali tale, the tale of Nari, the narratives of Nari Lata Bel. The next one is from Artpur, Radha Govinda temple of Artpur was built by Krishna Ramamitra, who earned a lot of royal estate as the Diwan of Bardhaman Raj. The temple of Nandalal Ji in Gurap was also built by the manager of Bardhaman Raj estate, Ramdev Nag. Native businessmen became rich by trading with the British and other Indian companies. Darhatta, which is a village in Hooghly, was famous for the kuthis of Dutch and Danish. And in Darhatta, the kuthi of Danish kuthi was there before Sri Rampur. The temple of Rajrajeshwar and Darika Chandi were built under the patronage of Apurva Mohan Singhora and others of the Darhatta. The business economy of South Bengal was dominated by the production of silk, salt, iron ore, lac, etc. The economy of Gonpur, a village of Birbhum, flourished for processing of iron ore in 18th and 19th century. Chaudhuri and Mandals, the patrons of the temple complexes of Gonpur, built in the 18th century. They prospered by processing iron ore in indigenous method. The French and British companies used the river Ojoy as their means of transport in the 19th century. The adjacent areas of Birbhum and Bardhaman became commercially important as a consequence. Businessmen like John Cheap and David Erskine became highly influential while dealing with silk and lac in the region. The famous city of Shurul near Shantiniketan in Birbhum was the center of silk production. The local businessmen like Sarkar family of Shurul flourished in this connection. Sarkars built temples in 19th century. Ilam Bazar was the center of lac industry in 18th and 19th century Bengal. The Mukhopadhyay family of Ajodha Bonkati in Bardhaman district and Dattas of Gurisha became rich by thriving lac industry. Both of these family patronized temple building. The next slide, please. This is a temple which is in Gurisha. This is a 19th century temple, and we have discussed about the Datta family. They built this temple. And the next slide, it is the Banakati Ajodha temple, which was built by the Mukhopadhyay family. Mednipur region was also very successful in silk production. The temples of Radhanagar and Patra were built by the silk merchants family of Mednipur. The Chandra family of Sribati Bardhaman was famous for their salt business with East India Company. It is said that they had 56 golas or center in North India and used to carry materials by boats. The magnificent temple complex and 5 mansions in Sribati and 2 in Katwa signifying their prosperity. The interaction with Europeans is reflected by the depiction of the temple walls of Sribati. Next slide, please. It is, no, this one is from the Bonkati temple, and here we can see the ornamentation. The figures are in, we can see the frontal view and the 3-dimensional effect, because this is an influence of the European art that has introduced. The next one, it is from Sribati temple, and the European figures are there. The next slide is also from Sribati temple. There are plenty of boats in the temple, and we have discussed that they carry salt and other materials by boat. There are instances where the minor zamindars build the temples not only to appease the god but also to please the British ruler. The zamindar of Hetampur Birbhum, Krishna Chandra, built the temple of Chandranath in 1847. There are several portraits of Europeans in this temple. There is a portrait of Queen Victoria, and most fascinating part of that, it is placed above the panel of Mahishasur Mordhini Durga. The next slide, please. Thank you. Here we can see that the coat of arms is there in the lower plaque, and then Mahishasur Mordhini Durga is there, and above all, Victoria, and portrait of Victoria is there. It may be noted that in 1847, this temple was built in 1847, that is, year in which temple was built, the queen was not yet the empress of India. India was under the rule of East India Company till 1857. Nevertheless, the devotion for queen is remarkable. The Hetampur Zamindar family was very loyal to the British ruler. Zamindar Ramranjan donated 50,000 rupees in the time of Delhi Darbar in 1911 and was conferred the title of Maharaja consequently. Temple building was common among the wealthy families in the 19th century. The next slide, please. Here is the coat of arms. The temple building was very common among the wealthy families in 19th century. Radha Krishna was the main temple deity in the 17th century temples. The Vaishnava Bhakti movement was its zenith during 16th and 17th century. But the dominance of Vaishnava cult gradually decreased. Shaiva deities became prominent in 18th and 19th century. In the 19th century, people who were neither the rulers or aristocrats nor the well-off businessmen started building temples in Bengal. Their budget was comparatively low. There is a documentation about the budget of temple building. The inscription of Dalan, flat roof temple of Dihi Chatua, which is in Medinipur, is like this. Sri Uday Chand Mistri ei Mondobe 350 টাকা খরচ হইল. This is the inscription saying that we spent 350 rupees 350 for the building of this temple. The purpose of temple building among common people was primarily to acquire virtue. The desire of upward mobility, we have discussed about that. It was there. The temple building was an alternative of pilgrimage although. An interesting inscription is there in Radhakantapur, Mednipur. পিতার কর্ম পরে কাশী গমন বাসনা কিন্তু গৃহে ভাতৃগণ করিল মানা. His brothers allow him to go to the pilgrimage, so প্রত্যাগমনে তো শিব স্থাপন করিবে, কাশী গমনের ফল তাহাতে পাইবে, এই হেতু প্রকাশ হইল কাশীশ্বর, মন্দার সমান কাম মোদক কিঙ্কর. He is saying that the temple building as an alternative to the pilgrimage. The temple was built in 1845. Now I am concluding. The temples built by the common people were considerably smaller than those built by the royal patrons. The budget was small. The aspirations and objectives of the patrons were different. Chaitanya started his movement mainly for the benefit of common people. He tried to simplify the religious tradition among Hindu Bengali. Neither any religious structure nor any fire ritual or chanting of scriptures were necessary. In his teaching, only Nam Kirtana or hymn of Lord Krishna was enough. Ironically, the temple building tradition of Undivided Bengal was an offshoot of Chaitanya Bhakti movement. In the 17th century, the Rajas of Vishnupur dominated the temple building tradition by and large. Other royal families and zamindars and wealthy businessmen carried forward the tradition in 18th century. The commoners became important in the 19th century. The common people, who were hardly represented in the panels in the preceding centuries, were depicted in the 19th century temples. The temple building culture initiated by the commoners was hijacked by the Rajas. The commoners regained the control in the 19th century. I am grateful to the organizer, and I have these photographs were taken by Professor Abhro Bose. I am thankful to him.
Many thanks, Dr. Srila Basu, for presenting such an amazing lecture. Our next speaker, Dr. Mrinmoyi Ray, is an assistant professor, Department of History at College of Vocational Studies, University of Delhi. Her areas of interest are temple architecture, cultural biography of monuments, heritage studies, and public history. She has published and participated in several international journals and conferences. I invite you, Dr. Mrinmoyi Ray, to deliver your lecture.
Good afternoon. To begin with, I would like to thank IJNCA for giving me this opportunity to present my research on late medieval temples of Undivided Bengal, and especially a special thank to Dr. Shilpi Roy. I would also like to mention here that I had the opportunity to work on the photo archives of David McCutcheon present at Victoria and Albert Museum in London. For internet purposes, the internet connection, I'll switch off my video and I'll share my screen. The title of my paper is The Road Not Taken, an Alternative Understanding of Archival Data on Late Medieval Terracotta Temples of Bengal. The title of this paper is from the poem by Robert Frost about the divergence of paths in search for alternative questions and their answers. Of all the scholars, David McCutcheon did the groundbreaking work of preparing the most exhaustive classification of these terracotta temples. Hitesh Ranjan Sannal did an ethnographic interpretation of his data. The data of David and Hitesh will be the primary data for interpretations presented here. These are some of the classifications or the temples that have been identified by David. There's a Rekha temple, Ratna temple, Jor Bangla temple, and Atchala temple. The previous field-based research and its analysis fits within the framework of normative dominant discourse, where either the temple types or the terracotta plaque themes are studied. Hitesh Ranjan Sannal was the only exception with his analysis and interpretations based from an ethnographic perspective. No attempts were made to understand the sequence and correlation of social, religious, economic, and political contexts which resulted in such proliferation of temple building activities during the late medieval period. This is the premise from where I have raised some alternative questions. Why is that Neo-Vaishnavism was successful in achieving this enormous popularity in a terrain not so devoid of presence of both Brahminical gods and goddesses, along with popular cult deities like Manusha, Shitala, Dharmaraj, etc. Also, how are these gods and goddesses managing to keep their followers and worshippers in this ever-rising popularity of Krishna? Special mention should be made of Shiva, as he is the second most popular deity after Krishna in terms of the temple dedicated to them. The last question is, were the temples just places of religious congregation, or there was any economic significance of the temples as well? Moving on to the first question raised in the previous slide, it can be observed from the data of David and Hitesh that maximum number of temples were constructed during the 18th century. From the data of David, 96 temples were dedicated to Krishna and 71 temples were dedicated to Shiva, respectively, during the 18th and the 19th century. According to Hitesh, 481 temples were constructed during the 18th century, and 824 temples were constructed in the 19th century. One would obviously be curious as to why it took almost more than 2 centuries post the demise of Chaitanya in the early 16th century for this proliferation in temple building to occur. The new Vaishnavite movement saw its disintegration in the form of several sects post the death of Chaitanya in 1533. These sects claimed to be carrying the true legacy of Chaitanya and validated their claims through the hagiographies. So, to integrate the different sects, the plan devised was to organize festivals. The most important of the several festivals was the festival at Kheturi in Rajshahi district of Bangladesh. This festival was organized in the last decade of the 16th century. According to Tony K. Stewart, what the festival of Kheturi achieved was, and I quote, the new Gauriya Vaishnava tradition was fixed into its current form. This formalization of Neo Vaishnavism also reflected through the means of temple building activity. Nevertheless, one should keep in mind that there continued to exist several other parallel sects within the fold of Vaishnavism, but functioning outside the institutionalized domain of the tradition. Here in this slide, I'm presenting the answer to the second question regarding the local deities. The formalization of any theology or practice can be achieved with great success through textualization. Several Sanskrit texts and hagiographies were written to spread and crystallize the theological underpinnings of Neo-Vaishnavism of Chaitanya. The translators of these texts in Bengali were not only Brahmins, but also people belonging to lower caste. Regarding performative enactments, Kirtan was most crucial. Kirtan is collective singing in the praise of the Lord, often performed in open spaces. Later, the movement became more and more formalized and institutionalized through scriptures and rituals. This practice got confined to be performed within the temple premises. Kirtan as a performative act had several schools of practice. Hiteshwaran Shannal gave special emphasis to Leela Kirtan, which was one such format where the Sanskrit Vaishnavite scriptures were recited in simple Bengali prose, followed by a Kirtan rendition of the same. Now we move on to the other text which was equally popular in medieval Bengal. The coming up of many local cults also reconstructed and reformulated the composition of religious terrain of Bengal during this period. A very decisive role in this was played by the Mongol Kavyas. They were composed from the 16th century onwards. Most of these local deities shared an intimate relationship with the topography and landscape of Bengal. In fact, nature and its association with livelihood of the farming community and religion were deeply interconnected. Special mention needs to be made of Shiva. He is worshipped both as a formal deity as well as his localized form depicted in the Mongol Kavyas. The most elaborate Mongol Kavya written on Shiva was during the early 18th century by Rameshwar Bhattacharya called Shivayan. In the text, he is shown as a weed smoker and a farmer by profession, who is not keen enough to engage in any form of physical hardships to earn his livelihood. What is interesting to note that the composition of this particular Mongol Kavya coincides with the time when most of the temples were constructed, that is during the 18th century, of which a large chunk was dedicated to Shiva. This clearly indicates that Shiva as a deity was very popular both amongst the patrons as well as the worshippers. Consequently, Shiva, the Mangal version, and the local deities continued to coexist despite the monumental presence and acceptance of Neo-Vaishnavism in Bengal. In fact, even in present-day Bengal, the perception of Shiva still continues to be one of a poor and callous peasant. A very popular song representing this image is Babar Name Tape Jagot Kape Emni Babar Namer Jor Ma Amar Pagolini Baba Gajakhor, which translates to the world shakes by the power of the name of Baba. Such is the strength of the name of Baba. My ma has gone mad and father smokes weed. Here I raise the last question about the economic viability of a temple. Here again, the primary data I use is of Hitesh Ranjan Sharma. Of the 1400 plus temples that he documented, he further classified the patrons based on either their caste or occupation, of which 1,038 were caste-based and 1,259 were occupation-based. He arrived at these numbers based on inscriptions, family records of the temples, records of the temple in the custody of temple descendants, oral testimonies, and structural features. Here are some inscriptions from different temples. The photographs are from the archives of David McCutcheon, present at Victoria and Albert Museum. Here again, these are terracotta plaques ornamentation and some temple types from Bangladesh, again from the archives of David McCutcheon. With regard to the comments on economy and temple by scholars, I would like to make a few comments. Tilottama Mukherjee argues that temples and economy were not just interconnected, but were of equal importance to each other. The temples were given tax-free land grants, which was further used for generating wealth, thereby creating a microeconomy of its own. In addition, the idea of dan or donation, both in cash and kind, also places the temples into the sphere of economic relations. The weekly haats and festivals and fairs on certain occasions also became a medium of engaging in mercantile activity of all kinds, and the appropriation by the temples was advantageous for both the traders and the temple. As a matter of fact, the water bodies were also not just used for religious rituals, but also acted as active means of transportation of the goods and services. N.K. Sin has argued that post the famine of Bengal in 1770, there was a gradual increase in population. The inevitable consequence of this was the increased and heightened demand for land and its rent. In addition to this, the economic policies of East India Company, particularly after the introduction of permanent settlement, led to social mobility of many caste groups as a result of their newly acquired land. This new land holding community participated in the temple building activity as an essential means for the display of their newly acquired wealth and power. Interestingly, the land holding community incorporated all caste groups, including Brahmins, as well as the lowest Antojo caste. As patrons, the caste differences were visible in the choice of the temple type and the themes of the terracotta plaques. The themes of the terracotta plaques are both secular and religious. The caste background of the patrons get reflected in the choice of temple type, as well as the theme for terracotta plaques that adorned these temples. Interestingly, irrespective of the residing deity and the religious themes might or might not get reflected in the terracotta plaques on the facade of the temple. Here we see Gangeshwar Shiv Temple in Murshidabad, West Bengal. Even though it is dedicated to Shiva, but the religious themes depict scenes from Ramayana and Krishna's childhood stories. This is Itonda Kali temple in Birbhum, West Bengal. This temple is dedicated to Kali, but scenes from Ramayana are depicted. Also, the secular scenes are exquisite representation of war between two naval fleets and Christian missionaries. With this, I come to the last slide where some concluding remarks have been made. The proliferation in temple building activity was because of Neo-Vaishnavism and the careful planning of Brahmanizing, formalizing, institutionalizing, and sanitizing the movement by Chaitanya's successors like Srinivas Acharya from as early as mid-16th century. Formalization was achieved through organizing Vaishnavite festivals and oral and performative renditions of the Sanskrit scriptures through Kirtan. The Mongol Kabbas were also another set of vernacular Bengali literature which acted as catalyst in popularizing the local cult deities. The temples surfaced as an important agent for the display of wealth by the newly emergent landholding community. This community was heterogeneous in terms of caste composition and displayed it through distinct thematic choice of terracotta plaques and temple types from that of the traditional patrons. The brick temples were also important economic centers through the fairs and festivals and the tax-free land allotted to them by the patrons. And finally, I would like to conclude by saying that the brick temples of Bengal cannot be understood only on the basis of vernacular architectural idiom or terracotta plaques. This simplistic approach takes away the magnitude of importance of these temples and their intrinsic engagement and association with the social, religious, and economic conditions of late medieval Bengal. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Mrinmay Ray, for your informative lecture. Final speaker of today's session, Dr. Nidhi Chanda, is Public Relations Officer, Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata. Previously, she worked as Assistant Director Development in Kolkata Museum Town Hall for 18 years. Her specialization is on temple terracotta plaques of present West Bengal and Bangladesh with an extensive fieldwork since 1996. Over to you, Nidhi. Abhishek.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts, for inviting me for this lecture. Today, the title of my paper is Portuguese Influences as Depicted in the Terracotta Plaques of Late Medieval Bengal Temples. Please start the slide, please. In 15th century, Europe witnessed the culmination of discovery that revolutionized an age and marked a new era in discovery and geographical expansion, revealing to man.
One sec, please. Abhishek, please play the slide of Nidhi Chanda. Abhishek, can you hear me? Abhishek.
Hanji.
Please play the slide of Nidhi Chanda.
Okay.
Yes. In 15th century, Europe witnessed the culmination of discovery that revolutionized an age and marked a new era in discovery and geographical expansion, revealing to man more than half the globe. Portugal was the epitome of these expeditions. The era of navigation saw its climax during the reign of King Manuel, who ascended the throne in 1495. This king sent Vasco da Gama to discover the sea route to India. After passing several countries, he reached the coast of Calicut in August 1498. The riddle of the centuries was solved. East and West had met. In Bengal, the Portuguese were also the European traders who established their camp initially at Chittagong or Porto Grande around 1517 by João de Silveira and founded the port that was under the possession of the King of Bengala. Their next settlement was at Shadgao or Porto Picoina around 1536-37 with the consent of Sultan Ghiyasuddin Mahmud Shah, the King of Bengal, who has allowed Alfonso de Melo to build factories in Chittagong and Shadgao and was offered custom houses. Hooghly or Ugolim became the third settlement of the Portuguese in Bengal that was later destructed by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan around 1632 CE. The Portuguese established 3 settlements in the Hooghly district, first at Shadgao. Second settlement was founded in Hooghly proper by Tavares, to whom Akbar granted a farman in 1579-80. And the third settlement was established in Bandel, close to Hooghly, by the farman of Shah Jahan granted in 1633, a year after the siege of Hooghly. Apart from this, a number of Portuguese settlements developed between Noakhali and Hijli through collaboration and with the local rulers and landlords. Bengal had a long tradition of decorating the walls of temples and other religious edifices with curved terracotta plaques since ancient period, though terracotta plaques attached to the temple walls in situ appeared in Bengal from Palo period, and it continued till the end of the 19th century CE. The subject matter of these terracotta plaques were generally the representation of the stories of Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puranas, Mangal Kavyas, and other varied stories of gods and goddesses, both traditional and folk, along with the ample representation of contemporary secular life, that is everyday life and incident of the contemporary people and society are realistically represented in these plaques. Among the secular themes, representation of the European traders, especially of the Portuguese, will be discussed in this paper. Portuguese representation in the terracotta plaques and temples are mainly found from the temples of Hooghly, Howrah, Midnapur, and in scattered way from other districts of Bengal, generally dated from 17th to early phase of 18th century CE. First slide, please. After studying the Portuguese-related terracotta plaques of Bengal temples, it is important to mention that the quantity and variety of Portuguese life and activity has been beautifully represented in the terracotta plaques of Ekoratno Charchala Ananta Vasudeva temple established by Rameshwar Datto of Bashberia, Hooghly, dated 1679 CE, presently protected by Archaeological Survey of India. The location and construction of this temple is highly interesting in relation to the depiction of Portuguese life, as Bashberia in the midst of 3 Portuguese settlements of Hooghly. Shadgao, Hooghly, and Bandel is a walking distance or a journey of half an hour from Bashberia, which became very natural to the terracotta artisans of this temple. Most of them may be from the locality, to depict the contemporary life and activities of the Portuguese neighbors on the temple walls, along with the depiction of Puranic, mythological, and other religious stories. Another important element of this temple is the date of its construction, 1679 CE. This date indicates the construction of this temple. Implies that the stories of contemporary life and incidents, especially the representation of Portuguese life that has been depicted in the terracotta plaques of this temple, were definitely prior to 1679. Now, if we study the activities and period of 3 Portuguese settlements of Hooghly, Shadgao from 1536-37, Hooghly from 1579-80, and Bandel from 1633, they are closely situated to Bashberia. We can surely come to the point that the influence and depiction of Portuguese life in the terracotta plaques of Ananta Vasudeva temple came from these contemporary Portuguese settlements. Apart from Ananta Vasudeva temple of Bashberia, representation of Portuguese life has also been found in the terracotta plaques of other temples of Hooghly, Howrah, Midnapur, and several areas of eastern and western Bengal in both coastal and inland regions. Though Portuguese had preferred to settle in coastal areas to facilitate their trade and other activities, but they did not confine themselves to the bank of the river, but extended their settlements inland like Sripur, Chandiken, Bakla, Katravo, Larikul, Bhulua in Dhaka, Bakharganj, and Noakhali districts of eastern Bengal, and Hijli, Tomluk, Pipli, and Bala in South and Southwestern Bengal. Another important, next slide please. Another important point regarding the identification of an alien or European figure in terracotta plaque as a Portuguese, irrespective of a British, Dutch, and French, is a matter of question. The basic point of identification is the dress code and then the activities. Portuguese figures of the Ananta Vasudeva temple used to wear baggy breeches gathered in at the knees with ribbon loops, small brimmed and high crowned hats, stiff neck stuffs, and short cropped popular male fashions between 1570 and 1630 among the Portuguese in India. Similar dress code of the Portuguese was seen in terracotta plaques of temples in other areas of Bengal and also in colonial engravings of Western India. In an interesting early 17th century Indo-Portuguese embroidered wall hanging, now in the collection of Museo Nazianzo in Florence, Italy, commonly known as Shadgau quilt or Portuguese quilt, the costume of embroidered Portuguese figures has a close similarity with the dress code of the Portuguese figures of terracotta plaques of Bengal temples. In a group of, next slide please. In a group of 76 large and remarkable colorful drawings produced in India around 1540, originally sent from Goa to Lisbon, presently in the collection of the ancient library of Dominican Fathers in Rome, inventory number 1889, the dress code of Portuguese male figures in a scene of procession is similar with the attire of the Portuguese figures in the procession scene in the terracotta plaque of Ananta Vasudeva temple at Bashberia, Hubli, 1679. Here the next slide please. In Bengal, during 15th and 16th century CE, the Portuguese were primarily recognized as the best naval power and had most modern navy in their possession. As a result, the kings or sultans and nawabs of Bengal often sought their help in battles against the oppositions. Mahmud Shah, the king of Bengal, made Alfonso de Melo as his military advisor in a battle against the powerful aggression of Sher Shah Suri. Kedar Rai of Sripur, one of the Badabuyas of Eastern Bengal, employed a Portuguese Carvalho as his commander-in-chief. The Portuguese were also in the service of the king of Arakan. Not only that, according to Akbar in 1580, Mirza Nazat Khan, the Fauzdar of Mughal Emperor Akbar at Shadgau, fled to the Portuguese governor of Hubli for protection after being defeated by the king of Odisha. Different types of activities of the Portuguese have been found from the terracotta plaques of Bengal temples. Among them, missionary activities are most frequent, like preaching of Christianity, trying to convince conversion, and even baptism is depicted in the terracotta plaques of Ananta Vasudeva temple of Bashberia and in other temples of Bengal. The ecclesiastical history of the Portuguese in Bengal is an important part of this study. Their conversions went pari passu with their conquests. Their sword always allied with the cross. While the one extended the dominion of the empire, the other propagated the Christian faith. Christians first and then spices was the basic motive of the Portuguese in India, which shows that the object of the Portuguese discoveries were more to convert new people to Christianity than to establish commercial relations. The Jesuits and the secular priests were the earliest on record to have come to Bengal. The Jesuit father Antonio Vaz and Pedro Diaz arrived in Bengal in 1576, and a secular priest named Juliano Pereira is mentioned as a vicar in Shadgau in 1578. Akbar invited him to his court in Fatehpur Sikri to explain to him the tenets of the Christian religion. The work of the Jesuits who came to Bengal between 1598 and 1600 is aptly described in their letters to Goa, the Portuguese headquarters. From 1599 to 1617, there is no record of any Jesuits in Hubli. The Augustinians meanwhile had established themselves in Hubli, and in 1909 they built their convent dedicated to San Nicolo di Tolento tomb, which was attached to the Church of Our Lady of Rosary. They took possession of all the churches existing there. In 1617, the Jesuits came back to Hubli and took possession of their College of St. Paul and their hospital and erected in Hubli their first church and residence. In 1666, Bernier wrote that Hubli alone contained 8,000 to 9,000 Christians, and the Jesuits and Augustinians possessed their large churches. The Augustinians extended their labor all over Bengal. It thus appears that representation of missionary activities of the Portuguese in the Terracotta Bengal temples followed both Jesuits and Augustinian order of Christianity. Next slide, please. Yes. These are the representation of the missionaries and clergies of Portuguese churches. Next slide. And next slide. This is the very important plaque. Here you can see the father he's standing in the side of the church as it is depicted as a temple, and with the rosary in hand, and in one hand he has a child. This indicates that is the baptism is going on there. Next slide, please. And this is the missionaries apart from Ananta Vasudeva temple. In other temples of Hubli and around, they are also the representation of Portuguese missionaries. Hubli became, next slide. Hubli became the common emporium of the vessels of India, China, Malacca, Sumatra, Borneo, and other countries. Until the Portuguese established a settlement in Hubli in 1580, their ships did not permanently stay in Bengal. The Portuguese settlement in Hubli flourished rapidly. Portuguese had bought lands and possessed villages on both sides of the river for a considerable distance from their town, Hubli, and they collected revenue from the villagers. The high watermark of Portuguese expansion in Bengal was reached towards the end of the 16th century, when the bulk of Bengal's overseas trade had passed into their hands. As early as 1535, Diego Rebelo has forbidden any alien ship to touch at Shadgao without the permission of the Portuguese. During the last decades of the 16th century, Portuguese settlement in Shadgao was flourished so well, and the Portuguese were in high favor with Akbar and Jahangir. The Chittagong settlement was equally well progressing. Hubli, Shadgao, and Chittagong were not only their ports and settlements, but they had also Hijli, Banja, Dhaka, and many other small. Extent of the Portuguese trade in Hubli can be imagined from the fact that they paid over 1 lakh rupees as custom duties to the Mughals. In course of time, the Portuguese of Hubli became independent of the Mughal emperor and they discontinued paying the nominal tribute. At the end of 16th century, both Shadgao and Hubli were in the possession of the Portuguese. Portuguese ships commanded the whole seaboard from Odisha to Chittagong. Kobigankon mentions in his Chondi Mongol written in 1598 that the coast near Hijli was dangerous on account of the Firingi ships. Next slide, please. The Portuguese in the Bengal psyche came to be associated with piracy and slave trade. In association with the monks or Arakanis, the Portuguese pirates plundered villages of coastal Bengal in the 17th and 18th centuries. There were several village tales about the fierceness and cruelty of the robbers and how the countryside would tremble at the cry of the monks. Villagers in their home or in the market, they would carry off men, women, and children, holding some to ransom and keeping the rest as slaves, either to sell to the Portuguese of Goa or Ceylon and other places, or forcibly converting them in Christianity to train them up as rowers in their own service. A.B.M. Habibullah aptly summarized the Bengali perception when he observed that the history of southeastern Bengal is mainly on account of the Portuguese and mob depredations on the coastal districts from Shundip to Hijli. Saurabhuddin Talish described that the Arakanis pirates, both mob and Firingi, used constantly to plunder Bengal. They carried off the Hindus and Muslims they could seize, pierced the arms of their hands, passed thin strips of cane through the holes, and threw them huddled together under the docks of their ships. Folk literature of medieval Bengal recounted the horror of mock Firingi in vivid details. Alaul, a 17th century poet of southeastern Bengal, narrated the trauma and encounter with the Harmads on the sea. Eastern Bengal ballads contain a vivid account of the Harmad mock depredations. The terror of, next slide please. Next slide please. Next slide. Yes. The next. 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 And the next one. Next one. The terror of Portuguese and mock pirates were so deep in the mind and memory of the people of Bengal in century after century and generation after generation that along with contemporary representation of the Portuguese pirates and slave trade in the terracotta plaques of Bengal temples, the subject became a theme among the terracotta artisans of Bengal in generation after generation, and as a result, the terracotta plaque depicting the Portuguese pirates and slave trade has been found on the wall of 19th century temple also. This is the temple of 19th century at Tilantopara. This is the Portuguese were not there, but the theme remained in the temple. The 17th century witnessed reversals in the Portuguese fortune. Other European communities contending against the Portuguese dominance in the seaborne trade had appeared on the scene. In southeastern Bengal, the Portuguese began to lose control over Dianga, Shondip, and Chandiken. In 1666, Shaista Khan repulsed them as Chittagong and established Mughal authority with renewed vigor. Already the capture of Hooghly in 1602 by the Mughal Navy has sounded the death knell of Portuguese trading activities in Bengal. Even after the disappearance of excluding trading rights, the Portuguese continued to live in a number of localities, coastal and interior, as gunners, pirates, clergymen, and petty traders till the 18th century, and were gradually absorbed in the Eurasian population of Bengal. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Tithi Chanda, for your informative lecture. Now we are starting our panel discussion. We have identified some specific aspect to discuss with our panelists one by one. Starting with Mahua ma'am is there? No. Starting with Pika ma'am. Ma'am, you have beautifully narrated Gupta Vrindavana. Ma'am, I wanted to know from you that what is the most important research source behind this, your significant findings, ma'am?
The primary material is, of course, the visual, the terracotta imagery itself. And I traced some of the images back, for example, to Rashmandal and other Vaishnav imagery in other media, in other regions, from the painted folios of the Bhagavad Puran, for example. We have at the 2 or 3 early really good sets, right? From the first one being the 1525 Palam images. And along with that, I started to look for, you know, the physical fabric. What do icons look like? What do the textiles represented look like? What kinds of images of worship do we have from these places? And to try to establish relationships with the descriptions that we have in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the main text of the early Gaudiya Vaishnava movement, with the Bhagavad Puran literature, with descriptions in the 17th and 18th century Bengali texts, and of course the words of Kirtan that we have surviving from the region to begin to understand.
Many thanks, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now I'm coming with Dr. Rangan Kanti Jana. Sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Sir, I wanted to do from you that you have contributed on women of late medieval terracotta plaques. Sir, I would request you to add interrelation of mythological and common women portrayal in this regard, sir. What do you think, sir?
First thing, Shilpi, I have just documented the religious and non-religious data. I think there's the plaques within the geographical space of Purba Bardhaman and Paschim Bardhaman. In my paper yesterday, I told that there was some relation with the literature which was evolved in Purba Bardhaman and Paschim Bardhaman, as well as within the Raro region, because the artisan mainly received the information from festivals as well as from the people who mainly patronage the temple. And reminded that most of the temple, according to the taste of the patrons, not by the artisans, because they are giving the money to build the temple. The thing is that in the vernacular literature, we have so many descriptions, particularly in case of Shiva Parvati, what I have told yesterday, that the Sanskritic concept or Puranic concept of Shiva did not follow there, but they follow the particularly the relation between husband-wife, Shiva and Parvati, and their son, not the Kartika, but the Ganesha, is a very unique thing in case of Shivayana, the Rameshwar Shivayana. Another thing is in case of Krishna's life, the early life, the younger life, and the later life, what we have in the terracotta plaque, mainly they followed the Bhagavad Gita and the some other stories like the Ananta Burudas Sri Krishna Kirtana. But they are not directly followed that, but they receive the information via media, because via media means here from the festival, the local festival, as well as from the patrons. And in case of Ramakatha was prevalent in the all over Bengal, not only this Bengal, the undivided Bengal too.
Sir, I understand. Just I wanted to request you that please incorporate this interrelation in your paper, sir.
Obviously.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I'm coming with Sheila Basu, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am, Dr. Sheila, ma'am.
Yes, I can hear you.
Ma'am, I wanted to know from you that what is the influence of Bengal Renaissance on shifting of patronage for terracotta temples?
Actually, I have discussed about the permanent settlement.
Yes, ma'am.
And the changing pattern of economy due to the parliament settlement, and the changing pattern of landlords and the wealthier businessmen are coming to the temple building activity of Bengal, and so and so. So the main center of the temples, the temple building activity was in Calcutta. The Renaissance, which we called, it is not at all Renaissance, because it was centered mainly in Kolkata, and Kolkata was a true cosmopolitan in that days. So the temple building activity, in the short, we can say that it is not at all connected with the 19th century Renaissance, or so-called Renaissance, we can say like that, because the rural Bengal, actually in Kolkata, the ornamentation is much less. In Kolkata, the Babu, they built massive temples in the Mondal family temples in South Kolkata near Taliganj, near Kalighat. They built the Choto Rashbari, Bodo Rashbari, and some temples. Even in Dokhineshwar, it is a huge one, but no ornamentation is there.
Okay.
This is a typical tendency of Kolkata temples, but we are discussing mainly about the ornamentation here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm coming with Dr. Shubho Mojumdar. Dr. Shubho, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Private family-owned terracotta temples got renewed by cemented outer wall in last decades. So I wanted to know from you that does our ministry has any proactive approach for private family-owned temples in this regard?
Yes, yes. Actually, we explored and we documented some important temple, and we also proposed for the protection. But there are some not success in every cases, because the local authority, they demand for money, or they not hand over, or not they are agree to protect those temples, because they understand that if the monument was protected by the ASI, then they lost their own authority. But this is not actually true. ASI only protect and conserve those temples, not interested in any ownership about the temple. But in recent year also, we also conserve the unprotected monument, which is not protected by the ASI. So this is also another view of the Ministry of Culture. They emphasize to protect the unprotected monument also.
Thank you, Dr. Shubho. Now I'm coming with Dr. Tithi Chanda. Tithi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Tithi, what are the major foreign cultures we get on terracotta plaques?
Foreign cultures means that those foreign powers who have come in Bengal and settled here. The most important of them was the British, and there are ample representation of British in the terracotta temples of Bengal. But there are also some Portuguese figures and French, and so like that.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm coming with Dr. Mohammad Saurabh. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, you have beautifully narrated the symbolic of law and representation on Bangladesh, sir. So, sir, can you tell me that in India, sir, does we have land representation?
Actually, yeah. Okay, please.
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay.
No, sir. Please tell.
The time frame, the time frame is 700 to 1200 AD. That time, the Pala dynasty and Deva dynasty kings make many monasteries, and all the monasteries in Buddha Vihara, we found the central temple, cruciform temple, actually is the Saurabhuddin temple, and decorated with the terracotta plaques. In India and in Nalanda and other places, in the Pilak in Tripura, also the same characteristics. In Jagatjivanpur, they found the 500 above terracotta plaques, all are the like same characteristics. And lion motifs is all over there, little or many. My work is that in Bangladesh, sculpture is more interested to the researchers, but in terracotta plaques, you find the report all the through is a single simple chapter. When I started my work, the idol is my Makkachin. So first I documented all the terracotta plaques. Last 20 years, I'm finding the terracotta plaques all over the Bangladesh. Then I found the different information. This is very interesting. You know the Royal Bengal tiger, one terracotta plaques I found in Dikit excavation time photos, which is found in Paharpur temple, and with the petal of lotus and with a lotus bud, it means the marshland of the northern part of the Bangladesh. But at present, we only Royal Bengal tiger found in Sundarban. But this is significant that the ancient time we found Royal Bengal tiger everywhere. Like that way, the Gondar, you see the rhinoceros found in Bengal, but at present we are not found anywhere. So lion representation is everywhere because of it is interesting, and very early time we uses this type of images in architecture and other materials. And this type of lion depiction or animal depiction also found in the Indian part and the Tripura also.
Many thanks, sir. Now I'm coming to Dr. Mrinmoy Ray. Dr. Ray, do we have a standard format for documenting thematic representation of terracotta plaque? Like I have read a paper of yours of CDOC. You have correlated with CDOC data shapes. Okay. So
thematic representation, if you talk about, as I suggested in my paper also, that whatever be the residing deity, the themes necessarily does not relate to what we find. So we can only classify them as secular and non-secular, and then further go on to the social context in which they were built, and the political situation, whatever was there, or the economic conditions, all that gets represented. But I don't think we can have a thematic sort of represent. But I of course feel a limitation of most of the scholars is that we often tend to see the temples and the terracotta plaques in isolation. See, going by how the topography of Bengal is, the landscape of Bengal is, how the temple is a living monument. It could be dead, but maybe it is reciting deity is no more there, but it probably belongs to somebody, or there are temples are there where people visit frequently. So the monument is not dead the way we understand abandoned monument to be, or a dead monument to be. So often in our documentation of the temples, we miss these very important, crucial aspects where we don't talk about the importance of the river bodies, how the river bodies have impacted the temples, how the building material, and how a lot of there are temples through my field work, both in West Bengal and Bangladesh. I found that there are a lot of temples which are not isolated temples. They are found as clusters. So that also speaks a lot about how the particular area or that particular period, respective patrons contributed significantly by each patron adding little extra or something else, some new form of temple to within that same little space. Of course, we find Deult also there, we found Dalan type also there, we will find Jor Bangla also there. So there are lots of temple clusters. So I feel that documentation is, the temple should not be definitely seen in isolation, but a lot of other factors should also be taken into consideration when we try and understand the terracotta temples.
many thanks, ma'am. Thanks all of you. And now I am requesting my colleague Gunjan Joshi to propose the official vote of thanks. Gunjanji, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shilpi Roy. Good evening, everyone, to the one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. But before I start my vote of thanks, I would like to mention here that this webinar and the virtual exhibition is a posthumous tribute to Shambhunath Mitru, who has actually donated his collection to IGNCI and who has left a legacy behind of more than 15,000 photographs on terracotta temples of Bengal for posterity. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Indian Council of Historical Research for their generous contribution in supporting this webinar. I would also like to thank our member secretary, Dr. Sajijan Joshiji, for constant support and encouragement to conduct this webinar. I'm grateful for the time and effort our keynote speaker, Professor Sudeepa Ray Bandyopadhyay ma'am, took to share her thoughts and experiences with us. I'm extend my gratitude to the head of Kalanidhi Division, Professor Ramesh Chandra Gorji, for his moral support and guidance. I'm immensely thankful to our distinguished speakers for the excellent presentations and making this webinar interesting and meaningful. I'm grateful to all the speakers for delivering as scheduled and sharing their thoughts and research during the webinar. I would like to express our deep sense of gratitude to Mr. Unurag Puneta, Controller Media Center, and his team for shaping our virtual exhibition. I would like to thank the moderator of the webinar, Dr. Shilpi Roy, Assistant Professor and in charge Cultural Archives, for facilitating the panel presentation. We really appreciate your time and efforts in making this webinar a huge success. I must admit it that it was a pleasure working with you and participating in such a well-planned panel discussion. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the known and unknown hands that contributed for the success of this program. Once again, I would like to thank each one of you with sincere feelings of gratitude. I would like to take your leave now. Good night, have a happy weekend and happy Independence Day. Hope to meet you all in person one day. So thank you all.
Thank you, Gunjan ji. Now we are closing our session.
Yeah, thank you.